The right has to win in every geography. The left only has to win in 2-3 geographies, and its power keeps getting resuscitated because it's a global network.
How rotten is this system?
True and true.
There used to be a time when journalism was considered the fourth pillar.
And it never was. I think people need to understand that journalism was never the fourth pillar that it's made out to be.
Agar main Call of Duty खेल रहा हूँ on a PS5, I'm basically more primed to be a better soldier. Is that what you're saying?
Ability to process information on a screen and act on it, yeah. 98% of Indian engineers are unemployable, you know that, no? Several studies have found that.
The new government not doing something to counter this?
Hey guys, so I'm Abhijeet Iyer-Mitra and I'm on Dostcast with my friend Vinamre, who's recording this at the moment. And I'd like you all to, if you like this conversation, do like, share, subscribe, leave comments. Even if you want to give me gali galoch, do that because it helps the algorithm. So do that. And the reason you're subscribing is you like nice unscripted conversations which just go in directions that might become uncomfortable at times.
Before we discuss other things, I wanted to discuss ये जो 3 states में हुआ है. Just continue our conversation that we were having off camera. It is a strange phenomenon to see once again the BJP has used practically unheard of faces and elevated them to the highest status a statesman can have in a state, which is the CM, right? You said it's actually a good strategy. बहुत सारे लोग ऐसे सोचेंगे यार this is just a way to centralize more power in the hands of the Home Minister, the party president and Narendra Modi.
I disagree with that. That might have been one of the factors, but remember these people have to win elections, right? You're not going to sacrifice electoral success to centralize power in Delhi. So what? And I think it's very good. So first, you've got a first-term MLA, a one-term MLA to become Chief Minister in Rajasthan. He's a Brahmin in a state that is that does not have a Brahmin majority. How
What's
do you
the
think?
majority in Rajasthan?
I think Rajputs are it's simple majority. I think.
Okay.
Let's just check. Because off the top of my head, to pata nahi hoga. Rajasthan majority community.
Rajput ही होंगे because I see that is where most of the news from that community comes out. I think it's a mix of Rajputs and other
is a
castes.
Brahmin, Jat and Rajasthan and Rajput dominated state.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's this trifecta that basically is the largest majority.
Yeah.
Okay.
Major sub-ethnic groups are Rajputs, Brahmins, Bishnois, Jat, Gurjars, Yadavs. So none of them are in an absolute majority.
Okay.
Right. So, but they're all form significant majorities. So what you have to end up doing is you really need to perform in order to swim. Otherwise you sink. Now, obviously they've seen some kind of administrative talent in this gentleman. ठीक है, इसीलिए इसको डाला है, number 1. Number 2, if you look at Chhattisgarh, you need a tribal in Chhattisgarh. And that's what they've put out there. ठीक है? And it completely goes with their social messaging strategy, which is, we're not going to just keep it dominant castes. The first Prime Minister from the BJP was Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who's a Brahmin. The second one is Modi, who's a OBC, right? So you have to circulate castes. You can't in Rajasthan, for example, you just can't have one caste that perpetually dominates. No? So they've circulated here, they've circulated. Raman Singh nahi, Mr. Sai. In Madhya Pradesh, what has happened is, remember Mamaji lost, that is to say Shivraj Chauhan. Of
course.
You all call him Mamaji as this thing. Not that I know him or anything, I don't know him, I've never met
He's
him.
just called Mamaji.
But he's just called Mamaji. Remember Mamaji lost the previous election, which is why Kamal Nath became CM and so on.
Were
and
it
so
not
forth.
for Jyotiraditya Scindia's rebellion, he would not be a CM right now.
Exactly. And this time Kamal Nath lost the election badly, and there is a belief it had a lot to do with central government women's schemes that mobilized this thing. But you tell me, when is the best part to bow out? After 18 years as chief minister, you have won one of the most spectacular victories ever. 2/3 majority. That's when you bow out with your head held high. As opposed to an ignominious defeat where you're past your use by date and things like that.
Yeah.
He's gone out on a high. So I don't believe it's a humiliation at all. Second, that place also desperately needed a new face, because remember, fatigue will set in. If fatigue hasn't set in already, it will set in. And you need that. So you needed new faces all around. You need a generational change in the party to happen.
I saw one of his speeches where he said that 18 साल पहले आपने पार्टी के एक साधारण कार्यकर्ता को सीएम बना दिया था, आज आप सेम अधिकार किसी और को दे रहे हो. But still you have to see that earlier you were mentioning Vasundhara Raje as well. You said that she is grossly incompetent to run a state. But was Shivraj also not that? Was he, or does he have a better record of governance?
He has a much better record of governance. Vasundhara wasn't incompetent. She was disinterested. She was a good administrator, but completely absent as an opposition leader, and too heavy-handed as an administrator. So you knew it would always become pendulumic, right? You can't afford a state like that big just going to the Congress every 5 years. Right, there has to be stability. BJP stays in power for say 10-15 years at least at a stretch. So they had all those considerations, and I don't think Vasundhara could deliver. She's pretty good, huh? She's got a tough, वो थोड़ा महारानी का वो अदा होता है ना, and people like that also. They like being oppressed by Vasundhara.
There's a clip circulating where Rajnath Singh hands her a chit of some sorts. And I'm not sure if this is a meme that people have made. Right?
I don't even know if it's from now. It could be an older thing, but no, she was told when she landed up in Delhi, she was told then. It wasn't a chit that was handed to her.
Okay, yeah, because it just, वो meme मानो ने ऐसा बना रखा है. This is the moment that Vasundhara Raje knew that she was no longer going to be CM.
She was told within a day of the victory when she landed up in Delhi to stake her claim that she is not going to be CM.
But just say I am Vasundhara Raje or I am Shivraj Singh Chauhan and मैं इतना काम करा है. I have a certain status. You know, I also have a...
sorry, but Vasundhara ने क्या काम किया है?
No, I mean like if I'm a party senior leader who's also, held positions in the state government, and my national party wants to now appease me because they're replacing me, what will they give me? A Rajya Sabha seat? Maybe presidentship in the next 10 years?
I think Shivraj Singh Chauhan they want to bring to the center as minister for something or the other.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I'm hearing. Vasundhara, I'm not too sure. Because apparently she's been not very nice to people in the center. वो महारानी की अदा होती है ना. So apparently they've got sure, your way, my way or the highway kind of an attitude with her. But I don't think Shivraj is going to be... Shivraj will be accommodated in some way or the other.
I see. There is a lot of dialogue coming from...
Yeah, governor बना देंगे.
हो सकता है.
Worst case scenario is governor.
Okay. Like the Congress did with Sheila Dikshit.
Yeah.
I've been hearing a lot of stuff, mostly seeing it on Twitter, of an increasing South versus North divide. And I had a gentleman on, his name is Nilakantan R.S., who wrote a book called South versus North, which I think some politician used that title to say why the Congress won in Telangana, right? And I listened to some of his arguments. He said ki, South ke andar, there is a very strong sense of sub-nationalism, of looking out for their own interests. Agar aapki Tamil identity bahut strong hai, aapki Telugu identity bahut strong hai, is tarah se. And the Telangana Congress victory is a sense that they have, in a way, rejected the Hindi majority that the BJP is supposed to stand for. Now, as a man who has half his ancestry in Tamil Nadu and half in Bengali and living in Delhi, what do you have to say about that? Is there actually a seed of discontent with a Hindi majority party sowing in the South, jiski consequences hum dekh pa rahe hain with the Congress victory?
No. It's only there in Tamil Nadu. I think you're extrapolating Tamil Nadu to Karnataka, Andhra and Kerala, where there is none of this, north-south kind of a feeling. They're very insular with their own people. So, for example, Mallus, wherever they are, they'll accumulate amongst other Mallus. Okay. Tamil Nadu is the only one that has had this kind of a movement. And the problem is, those movements have never sold in the neighboring states. So isn't it curious that the DMK and ADMK, which are both born out of this movement, basically DMK, they were all born from the DK, which is the Dravida Kazhagam, and which refused to contest elections. So the political part became the Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam, and then that split under MGR and became the Anaitindya Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam.
It's like RSS and BJP. Ideological
No. So DK and DMK were like RSS and BJP. But imagine if the BJP split and got a national BJP or all India BJP. That would be the ADMK. So they all come from that same Dravidinist this thing. Now here's the funny thing. Periyar, who used to say E.V. Ramasamy Nayakar, was not Tamil. He was a Kannada. Okay. The Karunanidhi family are Telugu. MGR was Malayali. So, Jayalalitha is Kannada. So, Tamil Nadu hasn't had a Tamil chief minister in the last 40-50 years. It has always been neighboring states coming and ruling us, telling us, imagine a non-Tamil coming and telling us about Tamil supremacy. And they came to us because that same ideology never sold in the other states. Okay. Now, irrespective of the ADMK's origin, they are no longer anti-Tamil or do this anti-India nonsense. That is a very insidious part that is only cultivated by the DMK and to a large extent by the LTT support factions which are left over ever since the LTT got crushed in, 2008, 2009, something like that, which overlaps with the DMK, but you can say they're much more extremist than the DMK. They're small, but they're vocal. Okay. In Kerala, you just won't find this. Okay. In Andhra, you just won't find this. Andhra, they're very comfortable, like, Dakhni is the language of Hyderabad. It's the Urdu spoken in Hyderabad, which they're very proud of in Telangana. So, not an issue there. Karnataka, again, never been an issue. So, you will see when it is convenient. Why is this suddenly just popped up in the last week and a half, ever since the Congress won Telangana?
Yeah, that's what
they want you to believe this bullshit. And there is no subnational this thing. Every state in India has a significant superiority complex. Okay. I have a double superiority complex being a Bengali. So when being a Bengali, I feel every other literature is crap. And look at you, all you Hindi belt barbarians. I am a Bengali, the bearer of, the inheritor of Rabindranath Tagore and etc., civilizing you people. Every state in India has that complex. Even you as a Gujar have Gujar attitude.
Sure.
Okay, you think you're coming to civilize all the rest of us, sedentary, your superior pastoralist nomad lifestyle.
I don't think any Gujar in the world is attempting to civilize any other generation. I think it is an inward journey.
Boss, tumne dekha hai, have you seen the cars that I saw coming to Faridabad right now?
Yeah, but that is a consequence of having
Gujar pride, lifestyle. Gujar attitude.
There is not a single car in the country that has the words Gujar and pride written together. Boss, it does not exist.
Boss, tu kya bol raha hai? I've already seen about 3-4 cars. Call my driver, he'll tell you.
It's more about ek Gujar likhna bas as opposed to Gujar pride. You're confusing LGBTQ pride and like Gujar pride.
No. Not good. This starts, LGBTQ pride is a completely different thing. Wo ek chutiya kaum hai that we'll talk about separately. But this is Jat pride. Jats also take great deal of pride. So after whiskey, Jat is risky. Jatitude. Kya? इतने सारे यार गाड़ी में every second car in Delhi that has a Haryana number plate says some Jat logo on it. My car also, my new car, I've ordered all these stickers to Jat stickers on one side, Gujar stickers on the other side.
Yeah, you're doing it ironically.
Yeah, obviously as a joke. But I'm actually doing it. See, if I get out of my car, supposing somebody tailgates me, okay, and I get out of my car. If they think I'm a Bengali, you think they're going to take me seriously?
No.
They think he'll get out of his car and start reciting Rabindranath Tagore. Okay. Whereas if they think I'm
That's
a Jat.
Stereotype, bro.
Yeah, but if they think I'm a Jat or a Gujar, they know I'm going to get... even if I'm not able to bash them up, I'll call up my cousins from Faridabad or whatever to bash them up. No.
What surname shall we give you as a member of our community if we were to welcome you? What surname is most appropriate? What Gujar surname would you like the most?
First, give me a good Gujar first name.
There is a man who has a bunch of trucks. His name is Max Badana. I think that's a very cool name. Because I always have this joke कि अगर वो max बढ़ाना उसका भाई min बढ़ाना होगा. Like you're it's like how much बढ़ाना do you want? I want max.
How about Moteshwar Bhadana?
Moteshwar is not a good name.
It could be.
So I think ऐसे Abhijeet Pal बढ़ाना is good.
Pal sounds bong.
But Pal is also like a common dehati name. Sheesh Pal, Netra Pal, ऐसे नाम होते हैं.
हाँ ठीक है, नेत्रपाल सिंह बढ़ाना.
ठीक है.
ठीक है, हाँ.
NSB, that's you.
हाँ.
Cool.
This is a good name. I like it.
Netrapal Singh Bhadana. You can actually make that your moniker, you know, on Twitter, and use this, cosplay this as a way to release some energy around this.
है ना? हाँ. So you tell me, which state in India does not, and it's a very good-natured, it's not a negative superiority complex.
Sure.
Every state thinks it's the cat's whiskers, and everybody else should learn from their state, right? Tell me one state that does not believe that.
Bihar?
No, Bihar में बहुत attitude आ गया है. You look at them, they...
Why the mass exodus then to other states?
No, see, mass exodus is different. But Biharis will very correctly point out कि BCMC, we are the ones that gave you 2 empires. More probably. When you talk about the Buddha, his entire life was spent in Bihar, no? Before that, Ajatashatru, Bimbisara, they all came from, the Magadha Empire came from Bihar. Then the Maurya Empire came from Bihar. The Guptas came from Bihar. Kalidasa did all his Sanskrit poetic works in Bihar. So, सब कुछ बिहार से आया है ना? तो they are very proud of their culture, huh? हाँ, मैथिल ब्राह्मणों का बहुत ये चलता है. हाँ, don't ये करो फाई. So just because they say, ए तोरे क्या 32वां चारत है and things like that, don't think they don't have that pride. I mean, you can go up to them and make fun of them and, you know, say, अरे तोरे को हम स्ट्रीटवा पे ले जाके बीटवा करित है. But understand, even then, they've got a certain pride to them.
Of course, the song Jia Ho Bihar Ke Lala sung by Manoj Tiwari is an iconic song indeed.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard it.
I heard him live at Smita Prakash's party. He was there singing, no?
Why is he such a funny gentleman?
He's fun.
Yeah. Do you think he's naive? Do you think he does not know what's happening?
He's very smart. He knows what's happening.
So does he play the whole...
Yeah.
It's an act.
Yeah, because look, tell me which one of us doesn't... True, you don't try to underplay your Gujar stereotype. I don't know why. But I always overplay my Bengali stereotype and my Tamil stereotype.
You don't write in paragraphs. You barely write a sentence on messages. The common stereotype with Bengalis right now is कोई बोलता है paragraph लिख रहा है Bengali होगा.
No, the stereotype of a Bengali is to be obnoxious.
You're not obnoxious.
Okay, sure.
You've been very hospitable in speech. You've been brutally honest about things. Obnoxious का मतलब होता है यार ये पागल आदमी इससे मेरे को मूड नहीं लगना. ये मेरा मुंह नहीं लगाना.
I think a lot of the left would disagree with you there.
I'm saying in friendship. Politically,
हाँ वो तो.
Like if your Twitter, if I see it, I'm just having fun seeing you destroy people left and right for a living.
But people don't see it as fun.
It's
Imagine the people getting destroyed. How do they perceive it?
They hate it.
Yeah, there you go.
You're destroying people with... Yeah, you're so bad also. You know, like... I remember I first met you and started following you. You're 100K, 120K Twitter followers. You're at 210K or something like that right now. What is surprising is I never thought कि कोई इंसान सिर्फ extensive threads लिख के on everything geopolitical, political and taking people down, you could get 100,000 followers. It's insane. It's insane. There's all these Twitter gurus who say, you know, if you post your truths, if you post your stories, anecdotes, lessons you've learned, all of that will help you grow your Twitter. Your Twitter is purely political.
You know, I've never thought of growing my Twitter at all.
You just speak your mind.
It's, for me, Twitter is, you know, when I'm in civilized company and you desperately need to fart, so you go excuse yourself and go to the bathroom to fart. That's why I go on Twitter. Twitter is basically where I fart.
I see. What is with the gossip column? Because it's been a while since I've heard the word I think 2023 ke saath na, the word gossip is no longer compatible. It's a very 2008 Zoom TV kind of thing that people don't use the word anymore. They just say expose like that, right? But you have a weekly column of sorts. You don't have a Daily Times supporting you. It's your Twitter with the one graphic. And you do these, and sometimes even I'm trying to guess ki kaun hai. And you've been, for some reason, you've been after legacy media particularly, right? जितने भी journalists है, किसका affair हो रहा है, ये हो रहा है, वो हो रहा है.
Because it is so rotten. It is so rotten to the core. They have such immense conflict of interest. They are so corrupt. They're complete beggars. I mean, people don't realize in private what big beggars they are. They will beg for money. They will sell their souls. There is one chap who's an editor of a newspaper in a large western state, for example, who pretends to be a sort of both the newspaper and this person have this sort of sense of great morality, or they have pretensions of morality. The bugger's wife was in the top 50 buyers of gold from Zoya. पता है? हाँ. कैसे बना? Editor का बीबी?
Of a print newspaper that's
of
dying.
a print of a let's say a newspaper that considers itself highly superior.
Okay.
And over and above the riffraff. Okay? And by the way, that person is fated in public. In private, not one of his so-called friends supports him. The moment I tweet about him, I get 100 calls saying, oh, this happened, Abhijeet. This is my story with him. This is their story with him, etc., etc. So, it's... And I never put things out till I've confirmed it like 2-3 times. Because, in India, it's very easy to come across a false story. So you have to have a methodology.
Right.
Which is, you're probably being played by somebody, which is not a good idea. So you always call up 2-3 people who would have known, and and you're always nebulous. You wait for the details to come out, because if you offer them the details, they'll say, yes, this happened. Whereas if you wait for them to give you the details, then you know it's true. Or at least you can put out the parts that are corroborated.
How rotten is this system? Matlab,
Through and through.
there used to be a time when journalism was considered the fourth pillar.
And it never was. I think people need to understand that journalism was never the fourth pillar that it's made out to be. But tell me, which of the other pillars are all squeaky clean?
Recently I saw news where I think a bill was passed where the government now has removed the Supreme Court judge from the appointing of the election commissioner.
Yes.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a very good thing.
It's a good thing.
It's a very good thing.
एक Supreme Court का इंसान election commission.
Only elected people. Look, if you are being appointed to a non-elected post, only elected people should decide that. No non-elected people should decide a non-elected post with that much power.
What about checking the power of the elected people?
That's called elections, which happens every 5 years.
I know, but agar मैं ही...
Is there any check and balance on a Supreme Court judge?
I'm not sure.
There's none. They're chosen in a closed process by their fellow judges based on criteria only known to those judges. There is no objective criteria. It's completely subjective. Why is their wisdom greater than the wisdom of the masses?
I'm not sure because they've been managed by the
It isn't. It isn't.
Yeah, but हर देश के अंदर कोई ना कोई तो ऐसा होता है ना जिसको अपॉइंट किया जाता है कि this is a person who has a knowledge of the law who will dispense justice because they've been chosen for the wisdom and
They've not
experience.
been. There is no legal knowledge required to appoint a chief election commissioner. Zero. If he's already being chosen from bureaucrats, he's obviously passed all his UPSC exams and things like that, him or her. And they obviously know the basics of what electoral law is and things like that to enforce it. It's that simple.
अगर मैं मोदी हूँ मैं किसी EC को चूज करता हूँ तो obvious सी बात है ना कि मेरे को एक upper hand मिलेगा elections के अंदर.
No. Why do we assume that? Why do we assume that? You're not choosing cronies. You're not. See, the way government institutions behave, you tell me one election commissioner who's been under a cloud.
I can't hear of any.
Yeah.
But they must be under a lot of pressure.
They used to be some time back, but they haven't been for a very long time. And this is a classic thing you see. Every time a judge gives a judgment for the left, they're like, oh, paragon of honesty. The moment that judge gives a judgment for the right, it's like, oh, sold out, purchased judgment, etc., etc., etc. My critique of judgments has always been the fact that it very dangerously erodes the power of the elected representatives in a way that I'm not comfortable with. It is a systemic challenge to our electoral system. Things like, so for example, the collegium, which decides who the judges are. It's complete fabrication. It's not there in the constitution. They just decide to make it up one fine day, and it became that. And this principle of, what's it called? Basic structure doctrine. That there is a basic structure which cannot be changed. Okay. Completely concocted out of thin air. As far as I'm concerned, they're completely illegal. They're ultra-virus to the constitution. They have been imposed on us without any electoral mandate, without any consultation with the people. Just ऐसे. उससे ज़्यादा तानाशाही कुछ नहीं है. So if they can do this and the judiciary is fine, I'm very happy for Modi to do this, and the election commission is also fine.
Fantastic. I want to move to something else now, because I may notice karta hu. Abhijeet Iyer-Mitra, if you search the name on YouTube, you're like I mean, obviously I know you as a friend, but I also know you as someone who's packaged and repackaged as a person who takes people down, destroys, and you're so loved on YouTube for various reasons, right?
And hated too.
And hated, of course, but that's the fun of it. Yaar, main na honestly, jab se I've met you, I've been very impressed by your knowledge, your ability to spin words together in a way that is not only enticing, but also understandable. And they also come from a place of knowledge. And sometimes the predictions are wrong, sometimes, you know, they're right. I want to get behind this. Like, take me back to your childhood growing up here, because you've had a unique childhood in the sense that your parents were both bureaucrats, right? And you know how to speak Latin. And that is different from the current bureaucratic class that we see now. We discussed this in our first conversation about the state of bureaucracy in the country right now, right? How is it that you've acquired the laurels you have, and uske first inklings hum logon ne bachpan mein kaise dekhne shuru kare? Were you like a bright kid in school?
Well, when I studied in India, I was a problem kid.
Why is that?
And when I studied abroad, I was like, my teachers loved me. It wasn't that my teachers didn't love me here. They were like, ये इतना smart लड़का है पर हमेशा zero क्यों लेता है tests में? And
did you not study? Were you against the idea of cramming?
I was against the idea of cramming. My thing was, you teach me something, I've learnt it. So the exam mein, I'll teach you something back. You've already taught me this. Now let me do, you taught me 100%. Now let me do the remaining 40% which I've learnt by myself. And they're like, Bhai, why are you writing this? You write what we've taught you. I'm like, what is the point? See, the problem is I now understand what they were trying to tell me, which nobody ever told me till I started doing my masters in Australia. See, sometimes even condensing it, that's when I realized how important it is to give kids an eagle's eye view or a bird's eye view of how they're expected. So, you know, it was explained to me on the very first day of my master's degree, and this was for foreign students, the orientation. The way school works is that till the 12th, it's completely reproductive. What we teach you, you reproduce. Because we want you to gain the basics. We need to know that you know the basics. You may learn a lot more separately, but please reproduce what we've taught you. Okay. On the other hand, because I'd also partially been in the American school system, it was a lot of innovation entirely by yourself. Go home and teach me more. But that's not what the Australian system was about, right? It was very much like the Indo-British system, but much better implemented, I guess, or maybe not. I've never been to school in Australia, so I don't know. In your college, what happens is it's a 3-year degree like India, and the 4th year is honors if your bachelor's degree. The 4th year is honors if you choose to do that. Now, what happens out there is the first year is 60% reproductive knowledge and 40% you innovate and come up.
If you write an essay, you're attempting to argue for something that you have not learned previously.
Correct. So approximately, I mean, they don't actually measure 60%, but they're like, how much do you know by yourself?
Right.
And then what extra research have you done?
What can you put together from a bunch of sources?
Exactly. Then, based on your scores in the first year, in the second year, it reverses. It becomes 40-60. as in 40% reproductive, 60%. We now trust you to do your own research. You've understand the methodologies, you've understood sourcing, you've understood the content that we've been teaching you in class, so go ahead. In the third year, it becomes almost 100%, and the fourth year is also 100% innovative knowledge. Okay, so when it's explained to you that way, what are your responsibilities and why it's done, it's then very easy. At that point, I could see why I was scoring ducks in school. Okay, and then of course there was mathematics, which was so teacher dependent. If I had a maths teacher who I really liked, I used to be like 99, 98, 97, never got 100, but there. If I had a teacher I did not like, it would be 7 out of 100.
Really?
Yeah, 7 out of 100.
It's completely faculty dependent.
It's completely faculty dependent.
You wouldn't even attempt to do math on the paper of the exam.
Yeah.
If you hated the teacher.
Yeah.
That's a very moody way to approach education.
But that's the way I was. So you can see why I was a problem child, right? Science, again, I never liked my biology teachers except one, under whom I did very well. Chemistry, I had one horrible chemistry teacher. I never performed well under her. But 2 other chemistry teachers I had, and especially there was this one chemistry teacher who took me down hydrocarbons. And hydrocarbons are just so much fun, and then I discovered under her the joy of valency and balancing chemical reactions and things like that, which was fantastic. I mean, see, and this is where I think my need to make... I don't see myself as an educator, but any of my talks fun is precisely from the fact that I've suffered from lots of bad teachers and have enjoyed so many really great teachers that I want to emulate being a good teacher to other people. Make it fun for them. Make it not complex. Make it really simple and try to kind of... that you get into a subject because you love it and not because mummy papa ne bola hai karne ke liye.
Right. Yeah, Tabhi, I've seen that a lot of think tank people are like undescribably boring to sit and speak with. And I'm not trying to take any names or say, but it's just the quality of a think tank researcher or an academic that just makes you dull in your speech because you can't get your head out of your vocation and explain it to like someone who's had no idea about tum kis bare mein baat kar rahe ho.
But like 90% of think tankers, I would say, are also a byproduct of the education system, which is all learned by rote.
Yeah.
So they've actively been disincentivized to be
original
or come up with something new. And you will also have people who, because of their training, love jargon. Like, I literally had a colleague, and here I'll name names, from GNU.
Okay.
Several colleagues who would give me their thesis, their final year thesis or whatever to read. And I'm like, what is this? I can't even understand this English. There are, forget double negatives, there are triple negatives. One sentence is running to, 6-7 lines long, sometimes almost a whole paragraph long. What the hell have you written? I can't even understand what you've written. You've unnecessarily put complex language. I can condense this entire paragraph down to just one sentence. And the answer I got was, if I write like this, my supervisor will say, what kind of pedestrian English have you written? Write good English.
I'm so sad about the fact that pedestrian English is penalized.
Whereas abroad, I was always told, don't use complex language. If you use complex language, it means you're trying to stuff it with more words and you haven't done enough research. You're compensating for quantity of research, which we expect a minimum quantity at least, by word stuffing.
Yeah, the fastest.
Never use jargon, because if a layman can't understand it, then it's not worth the paper it's written on.
I agree. I think when we use words like ultimately, finally, nonetheless, we're buying time from the reader. It's very... I think और लोगों को ऐसा लगता है ना इंडिया के अंदर भी ये वाली चीज़ है that if you add more words, you're considered superior, you're considered a good wielder of the English language.
India loves rhetoric.
Yeah.
We don't like clinical precision. The second thing is, and this is my big complaint, I think my only complaint with the new parliament, now because kal wo security breach hua tha, I'm hearing there's only one gate kind of security issues, but
Yeah. Did you see
I didn't know about
MPs
that.
beat up the...
I support that completely.
Yeah.
I support that completely. If anybody can name those MPs, I will send chocolates to their house. You know what I'm so proud of?
Yeah.
Is that they did not run. They stood up.
Which is a common stereotype in politicians, right? कि अगर आप, if you catch them in their rooms, they're going to be afraid of...
And they were not.
confrontation. Yeah.
They put themselves... Did you see one person run out?
Nope.
Nope. They all stood their ground. They were completely nonchalant about it. Who the hell are you? You may be a terrorist. They had no idea the speed with which it happened. The fellow might as well have had a gun.
Yeah.
Did anybody stop him? Did anyone run away? No. They all rushed towards him to stop him.
There was a gentleman called Hanuman Benewal who's considered the... जिसने सबसे ज़्यादा पिटाई करी थी.
INLD का ना?
Yeah, I guess, I'm not sure.
वो गुजर है ना? जाट है.
नहीं, Benewal is a separate community altogether. Maybe Jat, I'm not sure.
Well, he's not rishtedar of yours.
No.
Okay.
No.
I was hoping he'd be rishtedar of yours, in which case I would have taken flowers and chocolates and everything to gift it to him. But look, I'm very proud of what they did. ठीक है, थोड़ा गुंडागर्दी है, but that fellow should have never jumped down there and done all that crap.
Right.
And they did not run. They are not cowards. They stood their ground. You know, there's this belief that somehow politicians are cowards and the first sign of trouble they'll run. They did not. And this is when their own personal safety was at stake. They all stood their ground. The ladies also. The old men also. Okay, so I'm very proud of that. बहुत अच्छा किया. So anyway, that was related to what? I forgot.
You just had to bring it up. You said the new parliament building.
So new parliament building. Have you noticed how verbose Indian parliamentarians are?
यार British parliamentarians भी इतनी है.
नहीं, कहाँ है? See, they have
But
two
they do
rows
very- yeah.
facing the Canadian Parliament, the British Parliament, and all of that. They have two rows facing each other with very, very uncomfortable benches. Straight back, chota sa. I still believe the new Parliament should have been made like that, with the seat of the benches no more than about 6 inches, so that you would not be comfortable sitting for more than an hour at a stretch. Even that would have been a stretch. And speeches 2-2 minutes में खत्म होने चाहिए. Maximum 7 to 8 minutes for the Prime Minister.
यहाँ पे तो पूरे पेपर लेके आते हैं, पूरे डॉक्यूमेंट पढ़े होते हैं 42 पेजेस के.
God, and especially God, and some of them are like those elocution contests, you know. When I look at Mahua Moitra talk, it's like a school. I was taught these methods in school elocution. You know, you stand, you should gesticulate, you should...
You seem to be really enjoying trolling her on Twitter. Why is that?
I'm the biggest supporter of Mahua Moitra. I am not trolling her.
Come on.
Do you know I stood with her? I did a protest for her.
I know your many shenanigans.
But I did. I stood up for...
You're cosplaying as a Mahua Moitra supporter on Twitter. I see that. But I know
I'm not cosplaying. I support Mahua Moitra.
For what?
I mean,
what
look
do you
at
support
this.
her for? I know, I saw it.
Yes. So I support Mahua Moitra.
You stand unequivocally with her in everything she does?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Why do you support her?
Because I think she's the future of the country. I believe in this Andolan ki Mamta hatao Mahua lao, Modi hatao Mahua lao. I think Modi is terrified of Mahua, and I think Mamta is also terrified of Mahua, and Mahua is the future Prime Minister of this country. I think she's Sakshat Ma Durga on earth.
Wow.
She herself is... See, about 10 days back I said, she's Durga Dasha Prahara Dharini. And then she confirmed on her way into parliament, she confirmed, ab dekho Ma Durga aa gayi hai. What more confirmation do you want?
There was a picture circulated where Mahua is standing and facing the reporters, and all of the opposition is standing in the back. And I think one journalist shared that, what a powerful photo, seeing all the opposition stand with Mahua.
Yes. Truly. I mean, see, she has the power. Like, Durga could summon the army of all the forest creatures to support her in her fight against Mahishasura. This is, a brave Durga standing up against this Mahishasuristic, fascistic regime.
हे भगवान अभिजीत इतना झूठ और इतनी ट्रोलिंग कैसे यार? Like, just tell me what is
Am I smiling? Can you see my eyes?
No, you can do this.
Do I look like I'm joking?
No, but I just want to understand that because I have no idea.
Do I look like I'm joking? Look at my eyes. Do I look like I'm joking?
Yes, you are.
How rude.
For real, acha, jokes aside, tell me, why is that? I know she's a great speaker. That's what people tell me. No?
Okay, now that we're being serious, she's really not.
What is
See,
it?
this is what... This is how we were taught elocution. Now, I know the camera's done to this angle, so I'm not going to stand up. But if you're told to stand up, put, hold two fingers behind your back like that. And, gesticulate. Look at all the judges, because the judges sometimes would be seated together and sometimes they would be seated separately.
Right.
And we were always told not to look at the judges because that will upset you, or you might catch some... whatever. So look at your friends and tell your friends to sit at different parts of the audience and fix your eyes on them and always gesticulate like this and this and
There's
this.
a certain way of speaking in school which is very head bobby.
It's head bobby and it is rehearsed. And it's very, very high on rhetoric, which is what you see out here. It's literally a school elocution level delivery.
Who's a great speaker? Who's like the most natural, charismatic speaker in the parliament? जब वो बोलते हैं तो सब चुप हो जाते हैं, according to you.
I don't think there's one speaker as such.
Top five speakers.
Top 5, can it include past parliamentarians as
Sure,
well?
100%.
So I think Sushma Swaraj was one of them,
Yeah.
right up there. Like she really, everybody used to shut up when she opened her mouth. Modi really knows how to give it. Amit Shah also really knows how to give it.
Right now, he's become a better orator now? Or is
No,
it
but he's
because
always been great fun.
But it's because his speeches are fiery in nature.
They are fiery, but he also can maintain a cadence and deliver. ठीक है? I don't like orators. I like speech givers who are very good at,
What's the difference?
Huge difference. That you are extemporizing and you're reacting. It's not a prepared speech like Mahua that has been prepared that can be delivered out of context. It takes everything that happened on the floor of parliament right up to 5 minutes back and works it into the speech in your rebuttal.
I see.
See, for me, that's it. She always comes with papers prepared and things like that, which is, it's school elocution contest like I told you. The fourth would be our MP from Ladakh. I thought that speech he gave, thoda sunne ki kshamta rakhi, thoda sunne ki kshamta. I think that was a classic speech. I think he nailed it. And 5, who would 5 be? I don't know.
Smriti Irani? No?
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah.
She's also very...
But I don't know why she's not being given more time to speak in parliament. Because I remember when she used to give her speeches, it used to be dhada dhada.
Yeah.
It was great fun.
Yeah.
But she hasn't spoken in parliament for such
In
a
a
long time.
while. I haven't... Because I usually know who's sort of winning the speech games by किसी clip viral होती हैं. I see Amit Shah going viral a lot nowadays, ever since the 370 judgment came out.
I don't go by viral speeches, and I'll tell you why these viral speeches are very weird. They're very... I look at these viral speeches, I'm like, what the hell? There's nothing ooh-ah about it. I prefer the content of a speech overall than clips here and there. I've never watched these, Ben Shapiro destroys left-wing activist, or I don't know, Fidel Castro destroys right-wing questioner, whatever.
There's a few negative verbs that you can use. So destroys, takes down, attacks, retaliates, claps back.
I never watch those shots because I just find them so irritating. Because they can all be taken out of context.
That's the whole point.
Yeah. But I do think Indians tend to speak too long. I think parliamentary speeches should be short, sharp, and no more than 2 to 7 minutes.
So let's go back to Delhi. Born in 70s, 74, 75, 76? 77. Born in 77 to 88 or even early 90s. What is happening? You're staying in Chanakyapuri, right? Staying in Chanakyapuri. What are your peers doing right now क्या वो सब भी पढ़ाई कर रहे हैं? Are they like you in a way? Do you feel isolated because you're so smart or intelligent?
No, there are people much smarter than me in my school. Like, because my school lasted till the early 90s, right? One of my classmates is this guy called Krish Ashok who does Masala Labs. I don't know if you know
I'm
that.
interviewing him today.
You are? Okay.
Via Zoom. For real?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
अभी 4:15 में I'm interviewing him. That's so funny.
Okay, so we were in class. We were part of the same gang. There was another kid called Narayanan and one called Jayant. Jayant I'm still in touch with. Jayant is in Singapore these days. Brilliant guy. He does software programming and stuff. I mean, they're all brilliant.
Okay.
So that was the gang. So, I mean, I'm just talking about the publicly known ones.
Right.
And there are many other captains of industry, newspaper editors and things like that.
And what's happening in Delhi right now? At this age, like 10 years ke aspas, right? Chanakyapuri mein, who's the government? Are you slowly getting inclined towards the areas of defense, or speaking about politics? How is your upbringing like? Is it very political?
Not so much Indian politics as international politics. Like, when I was a kid, because I spent most of my time with my dad, who was very left-wing, I never thought of myself as Indian. I always thought of myself as a Soviet citizen, wanting to fight American capitalism. And for me, Pakistan was the small enemy. You see, America is the big enemy, and America and the international capitalist system that must be destroyed. I used to read a lot of left-wing literature and this and that and all of that.
And what was banned? What was something that if you were
nothing
caught
was
reading?
banned. Nothing was banned. In my house, nothing was banned.
Okay.
I was very fortunate in that my mom was always very right-wing and my dad was always very left-wing. And so between that constant Purva Paksha happening at home, you're forced to never take anything at face value. Okay. You always cross-check everything and you keep going to fro. So it's almost a preparation ground for research. Right.
How was your life as the kid of bureaucrats different from the kids around you in your school?
So in Delhi, it was very different because, in Madras, you didn't show differences that much. Like, anyway, in those days, everybody only had either Ambassador or Maruti 800. Then Maruti 1000 came. Which was like a big thing, and that Fiat Padmini and this thing. So you only had that. But in Delhi, like in school, the differences were like huge. You had these kids who would come from, these big Aurangzeb Road houses and Amrita Shergill Marg houses, and in those days, mein Mercedes and all of that. And we were like, yaar, hum to bus leke jate the school.
Even as a son of bureaucrats?
Of course. I mean, all the bureaucrats' kids went. None of them used, no bureaucrat ever used, even to this day, no bureaucrats' kids ever use mummy daddy's car to go to office and things like that. So that was very clear. In Madras, there was a separate car to drop me off at school and bring me back. Only for that, no roaming around anywhere else, or to take me to tennis in the afternoon or whatever. Or tuition, as the case may be. But other than that, nothing else, because and that was a car very specifically just for that. It was never the office car. So it was and it was in Maruti 800, which was by the time I shifted to Madras, there were lots of fancy cars in the market. So it was the basic entry level car that could be afforded, this thing. So you never felt the privilege or difference in privilege till you came to Delhi, when you felt like, yaar, hum to gareeb log hain.
But bureaucratic classes की इज्जत तो बहुत ज़्यादा होती है उस ज़माने के अंदर. At a time
when in school it never matters.
What matters
because in school you're never saying what is your dad, what is etc. It just matters who you get along with and who you don't get along with.
But damn, मेरी generation में तो बहुत कुछ बदल गया था. Socioeconomic status was visible on everyone's face.
Yeah, because India had by that time liberalized and all of that, right? I went to school in a very socialist India, where the difference between, say, had Mukesh Ambani's son been born at that time, he would at most have a Fiat Padmini and or maybe a Contessa, and I would have I love Contessas, or a standard 2000 or Rover, whatever it was called, and we would have a Maruti 800, which wasn't that big of a difference.
And was life slower in Delhi? Like, what would be the pastime of adults around you and teenagers around you and yourself?
It was very... I have very fond memories of it, obviously, but it was mostly going to people's houses.
For lunch, dinner?
For lunch, dinner and things like that. And I was one of the few kids who was expected to be in adult company. I didn't run off with the kids and play. I always found adult company much more interesting.
And did they confide in you things about the adult world?
No, but they would be talking and I would be listening. And they always think a kid doesn't get a lot, which is true. I wouldn't get a lot, but I would also get a lot out of it, right? The problem was it also screwed up my life because till I was about 30, I couldn't connect with people my age.
Okay.
I couldn't have a conversation with people my age.
Because you considered them just generally dumb?
No, because we were, they were doing much better than me in class and things like that. So that clearly wasn't the issue. It was just that outside of class, there were very few things we could talk about.
Is it that you
Not that we could talk in class, because you always had to keep your
of course
things and...
You're from the era of corporal punishment.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The school in Kashmir that I went to, it was full on...
Kashmir?
Yeah.
You stayed in Kashmir?
Yeah. I went to a school called Tyndale Bisco in Kashmir.
Okay.
And, part of the school furniture that the monitor had to account for was the cane. And you'd get caned on your bottoms or whatever.
Delightful.
Yeah.
Yeah. But tell me more about the fact that you spoke with adults because they had more stories to offer. You were hungry for new information and you had very little means beyond books. So you sat in on adult conversations to learn about the world.
And read a lot. So my thing was, I first... Right from, I think, the first or second standard, I remember getting this, what today would be called a coffee table book, with the golden funeral mask of Tutankhamun on it.
The who?
Tutankhamun, the Egyptian pharaoh.
Acha, Tutankhamun, yeah.
And I was fascinated by that. And I was also reading Asterix at that time.
Which is a famous comic series.
Famous comic series. And what happened was, I was like, holy crap. And, I remember reading Asterix and Cleopatra. And they're separated by 1,500 years or so. Almost 1,500 years. But still, it was Egypt and things like that. And I was like, this is so cool. It was just one of those pop culture things, I guess, that went off in my head. And I used to, by the time I was about 8 or 9, I had ended up reading some very, very complex books on Roman history, like Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this obviously had non-pedestrian English. This is complex language in it.
Yeah.
And
which kind of helped my language as well. And see, I learnt, when my dad realized I was getting this proclivity towards understanding Latin jokes translated into English, he decided to start teaching me Latin.
On his own?
On his own. And I started self-learning Latin as well. He could speak Latin. But as a kid, it's very easy to learn languages.
It's also easy in adults. Studies have proved that you can easily learn a language.
If it's taught properly. Not the way all these European embassies teach you, which is focused on grammar.
Bahut bekar hai wo.
Bahut bekar hai. Whereas when you're learning it, when you're reading Asterix and Obelix in Latin, see, it's really easy. The pictures explain a lot. You're not focused on... Latin focuses a lot, like Sanskrit, on conjugation. You're not focused on conjugation. You're just focused on enjoying the story and reading the blurbs.
In my 2 attempts at learning Spanish, 3 attempts rather, Duolingo was the worst because I wasn't in Spain doing that. A second was learning Spanish by going to restaurants and dealing with the people. Google Translate पे लिखा मुझे क्या बोलना है and then inferring. Lots of inferring, lots of immersion, right?
Yeah.
Inferring and immersion, sadly, cannot be standardized.
It can't.
It depends on the speaker, your willingness to look like a fool,
Yeah.
to speak Tarzan Spanish,
Yeah.
me happy, me go there, right?
Right.
Stuff like that. The third is, then I decided in the last few weeks of Spain, I was going to hire a language tutor and do it properly. That is when my Spanish went to tank. Because she was like, हमें ये grammar सब रटना है.
Yeah, this grammar rutting, which is
मैं
what the European
पक गया.
standard is terrible. It's not the way you teach a language.
Yeah, so I decided to not continue with her because I did 3 classes with her. I was staying in Granada at that time. And मेरे को लगा यार मैं अब ये सब रट रहा हूँ. She's like आपने ये करके नहीं आए. But I could say very naturally like table for 1, I want the check, I want to pay by card, what my name is.
So when I'm in Italy, every time I get stuck in Italian, I lapse into Latin.
And they get it?
They laugh, but they get it. I mean, they find it charming.
Yeah, of course.
It's not the kind of derision you'd get in Germany. Germans judge you for speaking bad German. The Italians forgive you anything. They're also not like the French. The French, you will, they very politely start talking to you in English, but
Secretly judge you.
Secretly judge you. The Germans judge you very openly. And look, in those countries, it's very easy to get away with English. Even in France today, it's become kind of easy to get away with English.
But Spain was an exception though. Spain, beyond the metros areas, you'd be very
Italy also,
surprised.
outside the metros, they will not speak English.
Yeah, but that's where the fun is, because you learn.
Exactly, that's where the fun is. That's where the fun is. And I keep going back. My Italian vocabulary is very good, but my grammar sucks.
Yeah, but it works.
It
You make
works
work.
perfectly. It's like my Latin. My vocabulary is very, very good. And because it's all asterisks and obelix grammar, I would have learnt the grammar based on that particular context and situation, which is not applicable elsewhere. But people understand it.
Yeah. It's very fascinating to see the first few days I could only manage a few words. By the end of 1.5 months, I could do a 2-minute conversation mostly around food and where I'm from. And I thought that was remarkable because I could also then spontaneously respond to a question they posed. And sometimes based on the area of the country that I was in, the dialect would change, they would use words.
So I've generally found that learning language for hospitality, so food and hotel management, is the easiest way because it is all contextualized to what is happening right around you.
Right.
And it's the adult's way of baby education, I guess, in that sense. And so food and hospitality lingo learning is actually quite easy.
I will say, you said कि यार यूरोप में ना बहुत superior खाना है. मैंने माना नहीं था. In Spain, I was spending £10 every single day on a basic meal, 20 on a grand meal, and I ate a pizza and an ice cream every single day along with salmons. ये मैंने इतना खाना खाया है.
Isn't it
against the carnivore diet. Bro, it was so tasty.
Yeah.
And I never put on weight.
Yeah. Because you know why? They're all walking cities. You walk a lot.
Yeah.
It's very easy to walk.
Yeah.
And here, going out is oppressive. There, going out is a joy.
Exactly.
Right? You never know what monument you bump into, or it's just nice walking on the road.
Yeah.
Right. The other thing that happens out there is Spain focuses a lot on the produce, like Italy, but in Italy you get a lot of crap. I've seldom had bad meals in Spain. I've had lots of bad meals in
But
Italy.
I think the paella is horrible.
Well,
मतलब
I don't think...
जलेबी बिरयानी है.
देख भाई, वो लोग ना चावल पकाना नहीं जानते हैं.
हाँ.
I don't think people other than East Asia and South Asia know how to cook rice. Okay, maximum till Iran they know how to cook rice.
I think this land
But-
rice that they use in burritos is okay. Like that's an okay.
It's okay, but it's nothing ooh-ah. ठीक है? I've had better Mexican rice in India than I've ever had in Mexico. Yeah.
तो लोग बासमती यूज करते होंगे Mexican rice के लिए.
Oh, no, I don't know what kind of rice they use, but I think we spice it up more. We put more cumin and more chilies in it here.
Yeah.
So it tastes better than it does in Mexico. Okay? So I don't think people outside of the subcontinent and maximum Iran, the Iranians know how to cook rice, and East Asia know how to cook rice.
But the Spanish get meat right like no one else.
Yeah,
That's
very good.
fantastic meat.
They do fantastic meat. The Italians also do fantastic meat. The French do fantastic meats when they are not braising it. I'm not the biggest fan of braised meats. I'm a big fan of Western roast meats. And, generally, you will get a really good pork or lamb roast in Spain that is far superior to something that will cost 10 times that amount in America. The Americans and the Brits don't know how to roast meat.
I agree.
I think the Germans know how to roast pigs and nothing else. And that to Southern Germans. The Northern Germans don't know squat about squat. And the Italians and the Spanish know how to roast a lot of meat.
I think Western Europe wins food completely.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's different strokes for different folks, right? Like if you go to Indonesia, to Bali, I think the best roast pork I've ever had has been in Bali.
Yeah.
It's called babi guling, and oh God, is it good? It's like next level good.
But I was in this fishing village in eastern Spain, outskirts of Barcelona, 200-300 kilometers away from it. And I had this salad bowl. उसके अंदर उन्होंने दही थी, but it's not like the dahi that we have.
Yeah.
It's like dahi के chunks हैं छोटे-छोटे. I don't know. And sorry, cheese के chunks हैं, cheese and dahi. They've got walnut. They've got really seasonal fruits that I can't remember the name of. They've got a little bit of honey. And they've got balsamic. And I'm like, honey and balsamic कैसे mix होते हैं? But
it does, yeah.
And it was the tastiest salad I've ever had in my life.
But that doesn't surprise me because I think Spain, so you will, one of the reasons I love food is it tells you a lot about the culture of the people. Okay. Italians get very upset if you muck around with their recipes. They're very conservative traditionalists.
Yeah.
Spaniards are willing to explore with everything. They're willing to test and mix and match and things like that. And Spain, I remember the first trip I ever did to Spain was a fantastic trip. It was we went to Santiago de Compostela.
The hike?
I did not hike. I just went like on cars and this and that there. And there's that ceremony where that frankincense burner is, because in the olden days, in the medieval times, the entire church used to stink of sweat. So you had frankincense from that lamp which would be hurled to and fro across the entire church to alleviate the smell of all the stinky peasants. And that's a ceremony to watch at Santiago de Compostela. So we were coming back, and in those days there was no EU. I'm talking about almost 38, 39, 40 years back. The food in Spain in those days was shit.
It was a poor country back then.
It wasn't poor because by that time Franco had already made it a very rich country. But the food was shit. People don't remember this. 40 years back, Spanish food was absolute shit. I remember it because it was quite traumatic for me eating the kind of shit that I had to eat. My father was very adventurous with food. And my mom is not adventurous with food. My father was, so I inherited his palate. I remember it being an absolute disaster, this thing. Anyway, we flew from there on a chartered flight to Heathrow. And I remember the guy in front of me was, in those days, ye sab restrictions hota tha na, ki how much wine, alcohol you can take after the EU became a zone. Now, of course, Britain's left the EU zone, but anyway. So he was taking two what looked like clay amphorae of what I guessed was wine. And he was like one ahead of me in the queue at customs. And he's like, what's this? It's holy water. He's like, oh, really? Open it. And he opens it and it's wine. He's like, and without batting an eyelid, I still remember that so clearly. He turns to his wife and he says, Edith, miracle, for the Lord hath turned our water to wine. It's like, see, that is so creative. We were all laughing and even the guard was laughing.
And he let it go.
I don't know what happened, but that memory is still etched in my head. But anyway, the point is, Spanish food in those days was terrible. Spanish food's become a lot better in the last 40 years, to the point it's become one of my favorite cuisines.
Even Indian restaurants can learn. I was very surprised to see like typically Spanish items combined with Indian food, and the Indian restaurants offering that up. as the main items on the list and
Yeah.
not the chicken tikka masala that you would
Correct.
expect all across the world.
Correct,
Which was a big revelation.
because they're not stuck to one thing. They're willing to experiment with absolutely everything in Spain. Okay, in Italy they absolutely are not, to the point where I know for a fact, because I still have my grandmother's notebooks when she went on her honeymoon to Italy in, what was it?
She was also a bureaucrat?
No, my grandmother was a school teacher.
Okay.
My paternal grandmother, the Bengali side, she went for a honeymoon to Italy and she had all these handwritten recipes. There was no basil. There was absolutely no basil in the cooking. She just mentions basil once as being seasonal to summer. Otherwise, there was no basil used. There was a lot of marjoram used, which you won't hear about at all these days. There was lots of oregano used, which, sure, you associate that with Italian food now. A heck of a lot of garlic, which today, if you go by these Italian YouTubers, they'll all tell you, oh, in Italy, we don't use this much garlic. These all the foreign American use this. We only use like the 1 clove of garlic for like 50 kilos of pasta.
Italian accent hai.
Bullshit. I'll tell you why, because... And my grandmother was one of those people who hated garlic and onion and chickens coming into the house. Because in Bengali households, these are considered extremely dirty products.
Really?
Yeah.
Fish instead, which is considered clean.
Fish, mutton are clean. Even duck is fine. Turtles are fine. But not chickens.
You had turtles in your house? Khane ke liye?
I've never eaten turtle, but apparently it used to be a thing. And onion was kind of okay, but garlic strictly no. And my grandmother discovered her love of garlic in Italy. Even then, she would only use it for Italian food. She would never use it for Indian food. Right? I mean, she used to sneer at it for Indian food. She writes about copious quantities of garlic no matter where you are, north or south. How does this add up to all the bullshit that these people are telling you today that we didn't use garlic? My friend Francesca, for example, who's a journalist who I stay with every time I'm in Rome, she'll tell you that in the south, she's from Calabria, they consumed large quantities of garlic every single time. And this entire thing, we don't use this much garlic, we don't do this, is a complete modern fad. Because, Italian cooking is cucina povera, which is to say the cooking of the poor people. So you had to do the most with whatever you had. And that is where the genius of it comes about.
Is that why it's so bread and pasta dependent?
Exactly.
And less meat. Like if you think about
but in the north, they have a lot of meat. See, it depends on growing zones. Even Italian cuisine is in the north, you'll get a lot of butter because there was no olive oil in the north. You'll get a lot of meat in the north. In the south, there'll be a lot less meat.
Yeah.
And it'll be much more vegetarian focused, which you'll see across the world. So, for example, North Korean and South Korean cuisine, same thing. The south uses a lot of garlic and chili. The north used to use, now of course North Korean cuisine is wiped out, used to use a lot less. It was meat heavy and starch heavy. The south was much more rice heavy and chili and garlic heavy. You'll see these differences everywhere. The southern states are all rice states in India, and the northern states are mostly wheat, except say Kashmir. Okay, so this is a very common thing that you'll see in a lot of places, and you see this in Italy as well. You look at French culture; it's influenced so much by the cuisine. This braising, a lot of braising in wine and things like that. Food tells you a lot about culture. The development, preservation, and forward journey of food tells you a lot about the state of society at the moment. So, for example, Spain has gone way ahead. Italy is kind of ossified. The French are almost has-been. Once upon a time, it was French cooking that used to be considered the pinnacle of sophistication.
I remember from my childhood that मेरे पापा हमेशा 5-star hotels के जो early morning breakfast होता ना, he would always insist on a French omelette, and I never got the appeal of why. But it was,
they never made a French omelette in India, but if you've actually had a French omelette, it's fantastic.
Yeah, so because he had traveled to France, he was like, let me try and get an omelette here. But वो क्या करते थे, वो omelette को बस wrap कर देते हैं ना ऐसे.
If you serve a French omelette here in India, it will be sent back because they say अंदर तो कच्चा है.
अच्छा.
But the people who make French omelets really well are actually the Japanese. They make French omelets better than the French do these days. Surprise, surprise. But anyway. But today, it is Italian food that is considered the absolute peak of sophistication. Italian and Japanese, for a reason. Because we appreciate more simple flavors and more pop-in-the-mouth flavors rather than pointless complication. You read Julia Child, for example, भाई सिंपल सा चीज़ बनाने में इसको करो, इसको स्ट्रेन करो, फिर उसको मिक्सी में डालो, फिर ये करो, वो करो, किसी के पास टाइम नहीं है. When you can produce very similar flavors with far less effort, why go through all that nonsense?
Yeah, I found that almost any Indian dish is made better by using white makhan, which in itself is a very simple compound.
Well, that shouldn't be the case. You know, I find one of the reasons I'm very committed to starting my YouTube cooking channel is to show people how the simpler the food, the better it tastes. Even Indian food.
नहीं, पर अगर हम सिर्फ रोटी या पराठे को मक्खन के साथ खाते हैं और वो मक्खन अच्छा है.
So now see, even roti or paratha.
और even like मैंने राजमा चावल के बाद मक्खन खाया.
You tell me, I normally never like paratha. The first time I've liked paratha in the last 40 years of my life has been in the last 2 years. First, when I came over and had your mum's paratha, you saw how my eyes popped. And that's why, your mum loves feeding me more than she likes feeding you. I mean, feeding you is feeding you is an obligation for her. Feeding me is an event and a pleasure for her. And that's because she takes effort in growing her own wheat, in having it chucky pissofied in front of her, and just the smell of that wheat is intoxicating.
It is.
See, it's quality, and you need nothing except makhan on that paratha. Even achar or dahi is sacrilege. Just that paratha, plain. But see, that is what a great paratha should be. And the second time I had it was in my friend Kushal Mehra's house this last about 2 weeks
Mumbai ke log bhi अच्छा paratha bana lete hain.
Surprisingly, Marathi made. And she made better gobi ka paratha than I've ever had anywhere in India, period.
Really?
Because it was a stuffed paratha and it was a crunchy paratha. How do you get it both stuffed and crunchy at the same time?
It's difficult.
It's difficult, but she did it. And I learned her secret technique. It was all technique. It wasn't ingredients, it was technique.
मेरी दादी बनाते हैं. She makes the best crunchy parathas I've ever had. Like to the
Crunchy
point
stuffed parathas?
Crunchy parathas only. Because stuffed नहीं. तो वो ऐसे होते हैं कि उस पे ना basically पराठा है. अब पराठे के ऊपर ही ना instead of one simple leaf on the paratha, उसके ऊपर layers बने होते हैं crunchy के. I don't know how she does that.
Lachha paratha.
नहीं, not even lachha paratha, but it's got layers. I don't know what lachha paratha exactly.
So that's oil लगाओ थोड़ा सा और आटा डालो, then you create the layers and.
Yeah, but it's delicious.
It is.
Right? I remember at that point मैं बिल्कुल भी meat based diet नहीं खाता था. I had 7 or 8. It was so good.
So something as simple as a paratha. How is it that if all the millions of people I would have met in North India, how is it only your mom's paratha and suddenly in Kushal Mehra's house the stuffed paratha turns out to be that good?
Because they all make it wrong. They all make it in a...
So what does that tell you about India's culture? 99% of the biryani that you order, including places rated 4.8 or
Behroo's.
5 on Behroo's, is shockingly bad.
I will say the quality of the meat is decent.
But
mutton ki
boss,
quality
biryani is not about the meat. Biryani is about the rice.
But I will say, if you are like, for example, if you're ordering mutton from a place to eat, Zomato se mangwa rahe ho na, sabke mutton ki quality inferior hoti hai. The way they cook their mutton, Behroo's, that's fine. The chawal that they have in the biryani, agar aap saath mein, if you eat both of those together, even with the dahi on top, it makes me feel bloated. Like I don't feel nice eating that.
I've not had a great commercial biryani in North India, except on the streets of Lucknow and in the streets, well, in a house in Lucknow some 30 years back, 30, 40 years back.
You remember
which was the first recipe I ever collected. It was a zafrani murg pulao. The simplest bloody recipe.
So zafrani is the thing that makes chawal yellow, right?
Saffron, yeah.
Okay.
But it's also intensely fragrant.
Okay.
And then Purani Delhi ki achari biryani. You just won't get that at a 5-star at all. You won't get that at any of the named Delhi ka restaurants or anything. They all try to posh it up and it doesn't work. And I realized this, that something should never be poshed up. So for example, I make a bread pudding. Okay, it's my favorite dessert. Everybody I serve it to, I mean, you'd be thinking, yaar, bread pudding hai. Bas anda, makhan, vanilla essence, doodh and bread hai. How good can that possibly be? Till you try it. Because the technique of baking it, and you try to posh it up. You try adding cream. You try adding, like Gordon Ramsay says, add pickled ginger in the middle. Lightly apply butter. No. Take brioche bread or some fancy bread like that to put in there. I've tried all that crap. It tastes like crap. You need to use trashy white commercial bread. You need to use Amul butter and lots of it. You need to use regular eggs, regular milk, regular sugar, regular vanilla essence.
Yeah.
It is the sum total of mediocrity. In fact, not even mediocrity, third-ratedness that makes it truly amazing dessert.
I agree. I think even an omelette, because I have lots of omelettes. The omelette that is simply a yellow omelette, okay, without any butter, without any bread, because it's lighter and cleaner, tastes like shit. चाहे उसके अंदर मैगी मसाला ही क्यों ना डाल लो. On the contrary, an omelette made at an अंडा वाला, जिसके अंदर वो omelette और bread को साथ में बनाता है, सेकता है, and then he divides it up with a चाकू, और वो आपको red और green कलर की चटनी देता है, and you dip the omelette, bread omelette, and it's delicious. And उस टाइम बिल्कुल नहीं लगता कि ओ यार gluten free ये सब. You fucking, I love that omelette. I can have 7 and be fine.
I will make a very, very simple French omelette for you, and you tell me if you like it or not.
Okay.
Because the whole secret of a French omelette is to first scramble the eggs and then form the omelette.
Really? So, like when you say scramble the eggs, you mean...
and you cook it on very low heat.
Okay.
Preferably a non-stick pan, but yeah.
So basically what I'm getting is, जो अंडों को हम एक bowl में डालते हैं, उनको mix करते हैं.
मेरा बहुत simple है. मैं अंडों को mix करता हूँ for a French omelette. I make different kinds of, like Indian masala omelette is, I mean, we call it an omelette, but I call it masala anda. I think it's delicious. I think it's one of God's greatest gifts to mankind generally. पर वो थोड़ा तेल में तलना पड़ता है. You can't make a proper masala omelette if you're not willing to use...
In just butter.
In just butter and a mix of butter and oil.
Okay.
But also pure butter also is fantastic. That's a completely different skill. But a French omelette, you whisk eggs, put chives or spring onions is what we get here. We don't really get chives. Spring onions.
Chives क्या होते हैं?
एक किस्म का प्याज का पत्ता होता है. प्याज या लहसुन का पत्ता एक किस्म का. Not exactly, but kind of same alliate family. A little bit of cream, salt and pepper. बस उसको मिलाओ.
Cream?
हाँ, little bit, just a little bit of cream. उसको मिलाओ. Butter गरम करो. Low heat, not high heat. There are versions which are done on high heat. I find I can't control the heat properly if it's high, especially on a non-stick. And then पहले उसको आस्ते आस्ते करके curdle करो. जब curdle हो जाता है, then you allow it to set. Then you fold it in half when it's still kacha in parts on the inside and serve it. It's the best thing you'll ever try.
Wow. Looking forward to it. I usually cook it on high heat, and I think it gets cooked very fast to the point कि उसके अंदर हल्का सा there's a roasted burnt taste.
So the burnt taste is great with an Indian masala omelette. जिसमें प्याज, टमाटर, हरा धनिया, हरी मिर्ची पड़ता है, which is fantastic. But that's a different kind of omelette.
I see. So the high heat is better for like that. But
or you can make a Thai omelette which is completely deep fried.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How do you deep fry an omelette?
So जैसे पकोड़े तलते हो ना, you make your...
पर वो omelette मतलब बाहर से उसके ऊपर लेयर आ जाती है?
वो यार वो बहुत मजे का ऑमलेट है, पता है, वो एकदम फ्रीली हो जाता है.
नहीं, पर जैसे कि चाहे हाई हीट पे हो या लो हीट पे हो, you still have like a yellowish eggy kind of thing. If you touch it with a knife or a fork, it falls apart.
That's Thai fried eggs which would have a runny yolk.
But जैसे KFC के ऊपर हम deep fried होता है KFC, है ना? So you've got that layer of crispiness on top.
I don't eat KFC, but
you know what I'm saying, right? Like, so when you deep fry an omelette, do you also get a layer like that on top or no?
You should with a Thai omelette. It's a very crunchy layer on the outside.
And on the inside it's eggs.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Is it not popular in the world?
यार इतना सारा तेल में डुबाओगे तो कहाँ पॉपुलर होगा. You know, there's a natural aversion to deep frying in most houses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
the most people do is वो जो smileys होते हैं, so आलू वाले वो खाते हैं Indian. That's a really bad food to eat anyway.
But it's, if you want to make chaat in a jiffy, it's actually very good.
Have you had natural sky ice cream?
Yeah, I love natural sky ice cream.
What is your favorite flavor?
Tender coconut,
Yeah.
chiku.
Coconut is one of those divisive flavors.
No, but tender coconut is not.
Yeah?
Coconut maybe, but not tender coconut.
I see.
And chiku. Sometimes the Alfonso. I'm very moody about Alfonso, but
Mango ice cream, I think, is hit or miss, because I think with mango, if you have too many of them, you can arrive at a point where it stops tasting as good as it first did.
Exactly. It's diminishing
Law of diminishing returns, yeah.
Basically, in your diminishing returns in your mouth. But I love combining Alfonso with the tender coconut.
Interesting. Yeah. I love the gelatos that I had in Spain. I could have one every single day. Even when they added like commercial stuff like वो lotus biscoff का जो cookie होता है or an Oreo. Even then, having an ice cream a day, and you know, if you have sugar at night in India too much, it's hard to fall asleep.
Yeah.
I ate 2 ice creams in a row and just slept fine.
So, you know, you also see this in terms of philosophy. Like, I went to a major, I'm not going to name the hotel. I went to a major hotel to try their new Italian menu.
Okay.
Ultra expensive place. And I was like, this is not Italian food. Everything on the menu was technically Italian, except it simply did not taste Italian. And I can't describe it to you.
So for context, for a village idiot के standpoint में, Pizza Hut is American style वाला pizza, and Italian को सोचते हैं वो कि it's thinner.
Yeah.
Right?
Not necessarily.
No.
Even Italy has different styles of pizzas.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no one style of pizza. So every style you find in Italy, you'll also get in... every style you find in America, you'll also get in Italy.
Okay.
There's no real style that you get in America that you don't find in Italy, which is why I find these Italian YouTubers going, oh, this is not how we make the pizza. Vaffanculo to you.
Bye, chala gaya niche.
But, you know, it's getting irritating. It's gotten beyond the point of a caricature.
So what was the
right
experience
now.
in the restaurant like?
I was like, this is not Italian, this is French. Even though technically everything was Italian. And when the chef came out, he was French.
You got the chef out?
Well, he came because we were having the full tasting menu. We just came to inquire because they were testing out the menu. He was French. And I was like, shit, I nailed that. You can tell when an Italian's cooked Italian food. It's taken me so long to understand that. Today when I cook Italian, no Italian can say it's been cooked by an Indian.
Really?
Yeah. But I remember a point of time where, you know, you have to have a feel. And the problem was when I became really good at Italian, my Indian went for a full toss because I realized I was superimposing a lot of Italian techniques on Indian which didn't work.
Right.
Indian food is Indian. And see, 99.99% of Italian food, Indian food, Japanese food, any food is the technique. It's not the ingredients. The ingredients are a checklist. I've never been able to decode that with Spanish food. I don't know why, but though I make a great gazpacho, or as they would say, gazpacho. But do you get a lot of the fricative?
The what?
The Z becoming
Yeah. Madrid mein khaskar, the Z became the th. It's the th. But it was very fun to learn the language.
It's not Zaragoza, it's Zaragoza.
Zaragoza. But they would always say that I would speak.
So we always used to make fun of them and say, totale, pura desh totala hai. And it's like, the beer is not cerveza, it's cerveza.
Cerveza.
Yeah.
Dos cervezas, por favor. But usse na hota kya? I think what I like about learning a new language, at least even if you do it like perfunctory tarike se, it allows your tongue and your mind to bend in ways you haven't imagined before. Yeah. Because if I'm just a Hindi speaker, तो मेरे मुंह को एक तो तरीके से ही like bend करना आता है. But if I'm certainly learning how to do, like my sister couldn't say r for the longest time.
Yeah.
You know, she would say d. So sadak or sarak, sada.
It's like Ori in Salman Khan's show. He could say anda. He said anda. Main anda hu. And it's most people can't pronounce the Tamil r.
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 How do you say that one more time?
Kanni Mori.
Kanni Mori.
Almost.
What am I missing?
There's a certain Z in the R which you're missing. I can't. I'm not an etymologist, so I can't.
So yeah, same
or a
with
linguist. Sorry.
As soon as I went to Granada, which has like bigger Arabic influences in Granada, right?
Yeah.
The Spanish also changed and became slightly less comprehensive in areas like Albaicin, which is the old district jahan pe Islamic influence aaj bhi hai, where you've got a very interesting Spaniard Arabic population living there who will serve you Lebanese foods and doner kebabs and all of that, but speak both Spanish and Arabic and speak a way of Spanish Arabic that if you're just speaking English, they're the hardest to get to, unless they're working in the tourist area, of course.
Yeah. So I've experienced all those different accents, and I can never get over the It's like I overdo it at times so I'm very racist that way. Every time I go to a place, I start talking English like them, which is, I find it's quite hilarious. Like in Singapore, I start doing all the la and waile and things like that. In Thailand, I start speaking like English. I can't for the life of me speak
Swadika.
Sawadika!
But it's good fun.
See, it's an intonation. The problem is, I've realized that sometimes in trying to imitate the intonation, I'm getting into iambic pentameter, which is not a good thing, but it's still, it's fun. I think the only language I've never been able to wrap my head around are the tonality-based languages. So Mandarin, Cantonese, Vietnamese, Thai, that where the tonality changes, I just like mentally tune out.
I found that I used to think that I speak really fast because I rarely speak from the diaphragm. I mostly speak from up here because I'm trying to get as many words in as possible before my breath runs out, essentially, right? Then I started speaking Spanish and I realized they're so fast. मतलब वो एक sentence में 10-15 words घुसाएंगे ना. It's super fast. It's a lot different than a Texan speaking English.
So you know how that works, right? A Texan speaking English will go very slow. He'll be like, y'all need to take a break and you need to drink some water. Whereas a Spaniard will be like, por favor, una break, agua. And it's pat, pat, pat. You know why? Because apparently all languages convey the same amount of information in the same period of time. But some might require more words and some require less words.
Right.
And so it is all crammed in to transmit the same amount of information at the same amount of time, more or less. So it's the verbosity or the lack of verbosity of a language that matters.
But I think the language is very beautiful. I think
Spanish.
Just being able to speak it felt like I was speaking in different exotic tongues.
This is, I guess this is the way we're almost pre-programmed that, even a grocery list in Spanish sounds sexy.
That's true.
Because you've constantly heard this being associated with Latinas in song and dance or whatever.
Right. You also romanticize the French, the Italian and the Spanish across the world.
Yeah.
Those cultures are shown as cultures of love, cultures where like magic happens. And
so you think that is the way it is, right? Latin sounds very profound. There's actually a saying that anything written in Latin sounds very profound.
Of course.
It's the way you're trained to think.
Yeah, Hindi on the other hand, I don't know what it sounds like to other people, because I remember I was going from Mumbai to Delhi in a plane, and these Colombian couple in their like 50s, they were sitting with me. And वो seat के पीछे लिखा होता है ना कि stow and latch during taxi takeoff and landing. It was also written in Hindi. So we were discussing languages के बारे में and all that jazz. It was like, it's funny how in Hindi the words are hanging from the sleeping line, right? So I never thought of the script like कि वो ऐसे लटक रहे हैं. But for someone who speaks Spanish and just used to like English के ऊपर नीचे apostrophes लगाना, it must be so fascinating to see how Hindi sounds like to foreign ears.
Yeah. I experienced that. I never understood the need for a roof or no roof, as I used to call it, because I learnt Hindi a bit later on in life, right?
But you can write it.
Yeah, I can write it. I can
Yeah.
write it. I can speak it. I can read and write. But I always found that a bit weird.
The roof on the words.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would feel very weird to not have the roof because it would look like a very foreign
Hai na?
language.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
It's almost like the cultures need to repress certain things or like to not expose certain things is fulfilled by the roof.
Yeah. And
Rajai
I don't know who decided that it needed to have a roof.
Yeah.
Because, in English, we used to write a certain way at a certain part of the line. I don't know if people remember this, but we had these 5-line notebooks.
Yeah.
There used to be a red line
So you
on
could
top
become
and
better
then
at
3 blue
cursive
lines.
writing.
Yeah, exactly. So it was different for Hindi and it was different for English, the way the things had to be placed.
So for English, it was 5-line notebooks. For Hindi, it was just single-line notebooks, right? Because
yeah,
the attempt
I think
was
so.
that
I forget now, but yeah.
if you are a good writer, as in like aapki calligraphy theek thi, so you want to make sure that there is enough space between where the second line starts and the bottom of your Hindi words.
But did you also realize that calligraphy was less important in Hindi? Hindi would just flow in a certain way. Sure, you would not have even strokes and things. But Hindi was much more, all Hindi was much more legible than all English, which would have huge variations in how it was written.
Because the words were not cursive at all. You literally had these 90-degree angle pe shabd across a perpendicular from the top, hanging from it.
Exactly.
Right? So it was very legible. Now, I also know some people in my class जो लोग हिंदी को कर्सिव लिखते थे, that was so hard to get through because they had italicized the Hindi, so all the words would be tilted. It was the weirdest thing ever. But they was never able to make intelligible their English from their Hindi. The way they would write their English, they would also write their Hindi. But and for English, I remember I had bad handwriting.
Yeah.
But मैं cursive की practice करी थी in one school. Then I came to another school and I realized no one was writing cursive. Everyone was basically writing like Times New Roman के font के अंदर. That's how they were writing. But then they would all, like, if they're writing like A, B, C, so it's not letter A, letter B, letter C. The A and B and C are combined with the cursive angle in the middle. So straight words, straight letters combined with cursive.
Just with a basic naam ke vaste kind of.
So that is a weird way. Like, I still write like that. It's very weird.
Okay.
But if I write your name Abhijeet, like I'll write A normally. The B I'll write like you would type the B, the H, and then with the H-I-J I might cursivize it, and then I-T I would write normally. And that's a phenomenon that I've noticed across several other people also.
Right.
Have you also noticed how Americans hold their pen from the top and sort of stomp down, whereas Indians hold their pen from the side?
Right. Yeah, I have.
Yeah. It's very weird.
Huh. But those are cultural differences. You notice that the more you travel in things. And I think it helps you learn a lot more about cultures, no?
I think the biggest mistake that most Indians that have money make is they often go to the countries that only speak English. And they often stick to the UKs and
they're not comfortable going out of their... unless it's, Sita Travels travel group, which is 80 Gujaratis who want to eat thepla and
Jain food
whatever
counter.
every day.
On your left is XYZ, on your right is XYZ. Aap wo cap pehno.
And they have these... you can find... You can find local restaurants to make you local stuff without onion or garlic,
Yeah.
It is possible to cook a lot of Italian vegetarian food without onion or garlic. Why would you not make them try that? And I think, you've lost 90% of travel if you don't try the local food.
I agree. What would you recommend to a younger person who wants to venture out of the world and learn? I think, for example, because it's recent, my Spanish journey was the most revelatory and life-changing of all the journeys I've taken. Because in the Western countries, I always had the support of the English language because I could speak it well. My going out of my comfort zone was mostly activity-driven and not people and sight or food-driven as much, right? Like, if I'm in America, I might go to a shooting range.
Yeah.
Because that's a phenomenon of the culture ki yahan pe different hota hai. But linguistically, like I'm not taking too many risks.
Right. I mean, I won't travel to, say, China by myself.
Why is that?
It's a language I simply can't connect with at all.
Okay.
So I would always find people to travel with. Right. Japan, I'm quite comfortable going on my own. Right. Because things just work. China is very complicated. With European countries, I've always felt at great ease because I kind of understand German vocabulary. And if you speak one Romance language, you kind of understand all the other Romance languages. So it's always been very easy for me. But I can totally get why people would not travel alone in certain places. But it's so much of a comfort zone dependent thing, right? Like Japanese is as alien to me as, say, Chinese. Not really, because I can manage with a bit of Japanese. Whereas if I try whatever little Chinese I learned, Mandarin I learned, it'll be like, huh? What? It's like my French. I think I'm speaking very good French, but the French are looking at me and going, what did you just say?
You have to have a little bit of delusion if you want to get ahead in learning a good language.
My mom is terrible. You know, she had this horrible episode in France because, you know, she went during her honeymoon when they absolutely looked down on anything English speaking. And nobody would tell her where to go. She was asking for instructions. Since then, she hates France and the French. And anytime there's a French diplomat or somebody who comes over home or a French friend who comes over home, she'll literally come over. This is the Madras house. She'll come over, or on the unfortunate occasion when she's in Delhi and a French diplomat comes over, she'll go up to them and she'll be like, hi, hello.
Yeah.
Mommy, what are you doing?
And
I'm speaking French. No, you don't understand what I'm saying. I'm speaking French. Like, they think I kind of pass it off as some kind of an oriental joke and push her into the bedroom. But
yeah,
she's decided to make it her life's mission to go do this weird shit with every French-speaking person she can meet because she's decided that that's how French sounds.
You're friends with several diplomats, no?
Yeah, kind of. Much less now than before, but
I met several as well. Haven't interviewed them formally.
They won't talk on the record.
Of course, of course. Do you think that people as diplomats become nicer and more accommodating of the country that's... like I remember that Germany in India has a very fantastic social media presence. Their president will like dance on Holi and the ambassador. Yeah, they'll do everything that is very Indianized and accommodating.
It's very personality dependent. I know lots of diplomats who hate India. I know lots of diplomats who love India. It's one of those things. Similarly, you'll find lots of diplomats who are very open to talking. You'll find lots of diplomats who are not open to talking.
Okay.
You'll find it because it's a personality thing. It's not... sometimes, friendships and things transcend culture. And they might talk to somebody, they might not talk to you. Or they might talk to you and not talk to somebody else. We have to remember we're dealing with people. There's no standardized format of a diplomat.
Of course.
Different people grow in their fields because they're able to get different things. One is able to achieve the same results by keeping quiet that another one needs to by talking a lot.
My most multicultural experience in Delhi has been we're doing a workout in Nehru Park.
Why?
I was blown away. No, because I'd never seen people from so many races in one place running like we were in New York Central Park. So you had people who were African American or of African descent. You had these tall European dudes. You had a few Chinese. And I was very surprised that I'm in Delhi and all I had to do was just not go to Lodi Garden and instead go to Nehru Park. And the entire...
Because that's where all the embassies are.
Yeah, but I was so surprised. Like it's when you look up places to visit in Delhi, even though Nehru Park is more pleasing to the eye, it never makes the list. People don't even hear about it.
Yeah, they don't hear about it, which is why it's so nice. As opposed to Lodi Gardens, but Lodi Gardens is very popular because it has monuments inside.
I see.
Yeah, just like Deer Park. Deer Park also has monuments inside.
Yeah,
lovely
Deer Park
monuments.
में कोई जाता ही नहीं है.
बहुत से लोग जाते हैं, but it's a very local park.
Yeah,
it's entirely for local people.
And it is very forested as well. Like I don't think
Heavily
there's enough
forested.
Sunlight.
Heavily forested. It's lovely. I think of all the parks, Deer Park's my favorite park because there are several different zones, and you go to one zone and you come across that.
I've seen snakes there.
Yeah, heaps.
Yeah. Mostly people park because they want to go to the Safdarjung market. That's where they park, outside the park.
Yeah, kind of. And I remember friends of mine changed Deer Park to Beer Park.
Because they had, बहुत सारा कूड़ा
They
पड़ा
got
रहता है ना
drunk.
वहाँ पे. Yeah,
They
yeah.
got drunk and they decided to spray paint the D को बीच में एक ये लगा के Beer Park बना दिया.
Have you watched Bojack Horseman?
No, everybody's been telling me to
I
watch
think
it.
you
But
will love it.
yeah,
It's one of those things where,
I can't watch cartoons.
but it's not cartoon. But like it's like asterisks, as in like you ignore the form, but you focus on the content. And it's this washed-up Hollywood star who is a has-been and now dealing with his life. One of the funny jokes in that is, एक दिन रात को दारू पी के वो हॉलीवुड का डी हटा देता है. So the entire industry is called Hollywood. And then at the end of one of the seasons, his friend, because he wants to sort of regain his PR, वो हॉलीवुड का वो डी लगवाने वाला होता है, but the guy mishears him, so it becomes Hollywood. So then everyone goes by Hollywood. It's a hilarious show that is about mental health, about like dealing with yourself. It's fantastic. I think you will love it so much. I guarantee you will write a thread on it. It's that good.
Really? Okay.
It's considered one of the best shows of all time.
I think the last cartoon as such that I could watch was Castlevania.
Okay.
And that's because my cousin makes it. And
It's this Dracula story.
yeah,
Romania?
and I like all Dracula stories. So I like
Okay.
anything to do with vampires. So I watch all vampire movies, serials, whatever. Like I like horror as a genre. So and it has fantastic production qualities. So Bojack, as I can see, is very crude cartoons.
It is a crude cartoon, but it's less crude than some of the other ones that have come around. There's this cartoon that's come around. It's called Paradise PD. Now that is horrible because उसमें पता क्या होता है? You've got this police chief who is wearing testosterone patches because when he was making love with his wife, his son used his revolver, barged into his room as a kid, and shot off one of his balls. So he wears testosterone patches. Otherwise, he gets proper boobs. That's why his wife left him with someone else. Now his son is a complete nincompoop, but he wants to rise to the level of a police sergeant and impress his dad. In the police station, you've also...
Why would anybody watch this kind of...
It's just this... Dimag band karo and just see the absurdity of what the writers can do when they have no rules to play with.
I never get this. This is like French drama. 99% of French drama is just absolute rotten crap. And they all go like even shit like Sartre. Sartre is such shit. They all go, oh, it's Sartre, it's Gide. Well, Gide is somewhat better than Sartre, but still, Sartre just writes shit.
I remember liking Sartre when I was in college.
I can't stand Sartre.
But I just did a perfunctory read of him, just like all other existentialists. Who I really enjoyed was Dostoevsky and Camus.
Camus, you can't compare them to Sartre.
No, but the whole course was called Existentialism.
Sartre is not even worthy of being the dirt under Camus' feet. But tell me, other than Camus, or kaun hai? I think of all the great French authors...
Nietzsche? Not
Nietzsche,
French.
Nietzsche is German.
And I don't even think Camus is French.
Camus is French.
Is he French?
Yeah.
Is he Prussian?
No.
Oh, okay.
Camus is French. Camus and... ये किसने लिखा था यार? Three Musketeers.
A black gentleman who's also French.
And that was common to both Pushkin and Victor Hugo. No, that's Le Miserable. ये कौन है भाई? How could I forget his name?
That's okay. You're a human being.
How the hell do I forget his name? Probably Alexandre Dumas.
Yes, Alexandre Dumas. Yeah.
And he wasn't given a proper burial because he was half black, so he wasn't buried at Les Invalides. And then Jacques Chirac had to exhume him from the grave that he was buried in and gave him a proper funeral at Les Invalides.
Wow.
Where Napoleon's also interred.
There's a lot of...
Re-interred.
India के अंदर भी बहुत सारे ऐसे writers हैं. I'm not talking about like Sanskrit writers, but like just contemporary, like 1940s के या फिर वो that people seem to love. Are there any particular writers that stand out to you? Maybe they could be socio-political, like Ambedkar or someone else. Or has their work been good enough to make international news like the existentialist philosophers of France did?
No, I think a lot of the existential philosophy of France was a triumph of marketing over reality.
Really?
Yeah. Literature, in terms of literature, I think Dumas and Camus were they were genuinely good. Indian literature, I haven't, or even political thought. It's very contextual to India. It's never had a global message to it. So in terms of local political thought, I've always enjoyed reading Ambedkar. But it's very localized.
Okay.
There is no global message to it. Also, maybe it's lost in idiom because most Indian authors have read them in English. And nobody's ever really stood out to me.
Some of the newer books that come out, and they come out every single day, talking about Modi this, Rahul that, right? Mostly political books. Would you recommend still as recommended reading if one were to understand not just the current political scenario of India, but historically, books that have stood the test of time, if one were to understand the social political fabric that makes this country, what would be your recommended reading?
None, because the social political fabric keeps changing, and I don't think there's any book or books that really captures the entirety of it. Things get obsolete. So if you read, for example, Hobbes or Locke or any of them which are very important, or Aristotle or Plato which are very important in Western thought, you're reading it and going, what bullshit is this? This is such basic stuff. But we don't realize that it's because these people wrote the basic stuff that we are at our level of social understanding today.
Correct.
That said, given that I'm at the level of social understanding today, do I really need to read all this stuff? Unless I'm actually getting deep into social theory. No, because it doesn't work. Right? We've moved on. And I find a lot of it is the same out here with India, that we've had so much social change since 1990, the generation of a new middle class, changing from a country that was only about 10 to 15% urban to one that is realistically about 65% urban. On paper, we're only about some 49-50% urban, but realistically speaking, we're about 65% urban. That's a statistical issue in the way we fudge statistics in this country. Those realities no longer exist. Right? So it's to the point that sometimes when you read something, you feel, was this true even then? I mean, maybe it wasn't true. Let's take caste, for example, right? I think there are a lot of people who genuinely believe that caste oppression was brought by the British. And for every example of caste oppression you give me historically before the British, going right back to, BC times or whatever, I can show you an equal example from the same period of time where caste did not matter. So you think it's very much like today, no? In some places, caste is completely irrelevant. In some families and regions, it's irrelevant. And in some, it's the only thing that matters.
Right.
That again is problematic because we are transposing what today's reality back in the past when it wasn't like that. I don't know what the easy answer to this is, but basically I've never read an Indian sociological history that has in any way impressed me remotely. I find reading a lot of Western books, and however inaccurate that methodology is, of transposing the reasons that, say, deurbanization or fragmentation of a society happens onto India to be better than reading a lot of Indian books. Because Indian books, one thing about them is they tend to be extremely ideological. To the point where you really don't know if you're being gaslit or not.
I think that's also true with the kind of books that are coming out now. Mostly books on the Hindu right. Itni sari aa rahi hain that I see nothing on the left, not even remotely. I don't think even.
Look, this is, there's no point, there's no profit in denying this, but the right wing is full of people who can't come up with original thought. They can't write books. Some of them, of course, have day jobs, so they don't have time to write books, who probably can. But there are some people who generally be associated with a sort of a Hindu awakening and right who can write books. Ganatra.
Yeah,
She
she's
can write.
fantastic.
She's fantastic, right?
She would probably be the only author that I would interview again and again and never get bored.
And you'd never get bored because, look, her research is absolutely, she's not responding to anybody.
Yeah.
It's a completely original book which forces everybody else to respond.
And it's such an ambitious project to explain away entire epics.
Exactly.
You know, and to do it at a time when everyone assumes they're the expert on Indian epics.
Exactly, right. In terms of history, Meenakshi Jain. Okay, but that's so contextual. If you read a book on Sati, your mind will be blown. Okay, because she'll show you that this was, a lot of it was just atrocity literature. Sure, there was Sati, of course. But if you actually go through the epigraphic records of it, all the recorded instances and cumulatively add them up and what corroborates with the epigraphic and literary records, it was nowhere near as pervasive as it's made out to be. Okay. Then you'd have, who else? Vikram Sampath, which is very academic writing. If most people don't have the patience to go through his academic writing, like his volumes on Savarkar are fantastic. But tell me, other than these three people, who would you actually say has written something that is not reactionary? Everything is a reaction or critique of something the left has come up with. Our default mode is to respond to the left. It is not to go do primary research and come up with something original entirely by yourself. It's all responsive. It's context driven, and whereas Vikram Sampath's book on Savarkar would stand the test of time. Meenakshi Jain's book on Sati would stand the test of time. Ami Ganatra's books on the Mahabharata and Ramayana, they stand the test of time, right? Because they're completely new. They're not a retelling or anything like that. The left does a lot of original work. It doesn't matter that a lot of it is ideological bullshit, but at least they are forcing reactions around it, and it sets the norm. The right doesn't do that. The right is constantly griping about the left doing it. And it's constantly, it's griping about why they get to set the narrative and we don't.
But the truth is that the right gets to set the narrative now.
Do they really?
Yeah.
How?
मेरे को तो ये लग रहा है हर तरफ हिंदू अब तो जीत हो चुकी है. The Hindu right has won completely. What does the left have anymore?
Electorally. And I'll tell you what the left has. This is a point that our mutual friend Manu Joseph made. The right is local, the left is global. The right has to win in every geography. The left only has to win in 2-3 geographies, and its power keeps getting resuscitated because it's a global network. You understand? So no, we have not won the narrative battle. We have not even set the narrative. We have not rewritten the books. You had an education minister who took great pride in saying we have not changed one word in the books. This is not the way things work. The books and institutions are the first things you change, which has simply not happened. So no, it isn't.
Common parlance में तो बिल्कुल अलग लगता है. It seems to me that the right gets to control the narrative completely and the left just has to supposed to react to it.
It's the opposite, no?
Yeah,
it's the opposite. It's the left that keeps setting the narrative, and it's the right that keeps reacting. Even now, we're perpetually in reaction mode.
Really?
Yeah. Where's the narrative setting?
If there is such a complete electoral majority, who is the right now reacting to? what kind of things are they reacting to?
See, an academic capture withstands an electoral majority. You can have 10 more electoral majorities over the next 50 years and a left capture of the humanities is not going anywhere.
But why is that critical? Because humanities को ज़्यादा vilify किया जा रहा है. So even like that, the status like...
Look, a lot of humanities is concocted bullshit these days.
Agreed.
Okay, there used to be a time when it was actual serious work. It's because the left always, like, you know, Lenin used to say every idea is worth 1,000 pages. The left produces 1,000 pages for every idea, no matter how stupid or how real. So it's just sheer dumb luck that when you're looking for any humanities subject, 99.99% of the stuff you'll read is left-wing stuff. They've already named things, they've already categorized things, they've set the entire epistemology of that. So even when you write, you're going to be using their constructs, their language, their ideas. There's nothing you can do about it. Unless you're very, very serious. In America, that counter movement has started, even though the universities are heavily left-wing. I don't know if it will reach fruition, but you've seen the nascent stages of that commence out there. In India, it has still not commenced, at least looking at humanities in a very scientific way, has not commenced. And at the same time, I'm very clear about this. We shouldn't be writing crap just to oppose the left. Right? But the amount of importance that the left has paid to humanities, which the right simply does not. The general idea in a BJP voting family would be मेरा बच्चा डॉक्टर बनेगा नहीं तो फिर इंजीनियर बनेगा. अरे उस घर में ना वो लाजवंती का जो बेटा है ना वो थोड़ा अकल कम है उसका बेचारा को हिस्ट्री में एडमिशन मिल गया.
There's a vilification of a humanities education in a BJP household is what you're saying.
In right wings in general.
Okay.
Because it's deemed airy-fairy.
It's deemed non-materialistic, non-practical.
Exactly. पैसा नहीं आएगा.
True.
Science, doctor, या trades.
But here you are, no? What you're doing is...
Hello, excuse me. My mom wanted me to become a doctor and an engineer.
नहीं बात ठीक है. पापा ने कुछ और चाहा होगा. But you're a product of the humanities through and through, no?
Yeah, completely.
And the fact...
No, but I was forced to do my BCom, huh?
BCom क्या है? It's the most fluff degree in the world. Everyone does a BCom.
No. BCom is, boss, accounts and CA are their sciences.
Okay.
Well, they're very methodological. You can't...
They're very methodological.
You can't bullshit around.
I agree. You did a BCom? I thought you were a hotel management student, bro.
I also did hotel. So I've done lots of things. I've done my BCom. I've done my master's in gastronomy. I've done a graduate degree in hotel management.
And yet you're known for defense.
And I've done a master's in international relations.
Okay, because of that.
Yeah. And I'm doing my PhD. And so it's, yeah.
When did you come into internet national prominence? Because you've been around.
I don't remember.
You don't remember? Like, when did you become lauded and celebrated as someone who people started inviting to things, to speak, to give lectures, talks?
I don't remember.
It was very natural, your transition.
Yeah. Like, I used to do a lot of it when I was in Australia. But, you know, Australia is a very boutique society. You don't go viral and shit like that. You're invited to different calm academic settings to deliver speeches and things like that, which was university to university and conference to conference and things like that. It was only when I came back to India about 2011, so 12 years back, I got a newspaper column within a year.
Because your writing was visible to the right people? Like, what were you doing?
Well, my mentor there was Kanchan Gupta, who was the editor of The Pioneer.
Who's now the Minister of IB?
No. He was advisor to the government. Yeah, he was advisor till very recently. He was advisor to the government on media management. And he used to be the spokesperson under Vajpayee, I think. Or the press something under Vajpayee, if I'm not mistaken. He gave me my first column in the Daily Pioneer. And then other people started noticing and...
And you sent your writings to him? Or did he...
No, he talent spotted me at one of these conferences.
Okay, where you were speaking, not writing.
I was speaking, not writing.
Wow. And so you began as a writer on defense. What would you write about?
Defense, foreign policy.
Those are 11 ke
social.
andar.
It was mostly defense and foreign policy.
Okay.
And then
As an MA in international relations.
yeah. And then I switched to ORF, where my boss there, Sameer Saran, he was like, for the first year, you're not writing on defense and foreign policy. I'm like, what the hell, man? I mean, this is my bread and butter. You're not letting me write on what I want to write on. He's like, you'll become a much better analyst, trust me on this, if I make you write on social policy. I want you to work with the education guys, the health and nutrition guys, and the climate change guys. And I was like, I was cursing him for the entire first year.
Really?
Yeah.
So when was this?
And guess
when
what?
When did you first join ORF?
I don't know, 2012 end, maybe 2013.
So 1 year you wrote for the newspaper column?
2 years by that time.
Okay.
And one of these years was at ORF. And see, there I could write, in the newspaper I could write whatever I wanted, but in the organization, I was not meant to touch defense and foreign policy for the first year because he wanted me to learn about all the other policies. The best thing I ever did, because there were elements of education, health and nutrition, climate change, which we never consider in defense, that plays such a huge role in defense. Should have been very blessed to have people like this who, have against my will literally thrashed me into doing other subjects, which I've then really, really enjoyed, which then just expands the scope of what all I'm considering goes into a decision.
बहुत simple शब्दों में अगर मैं पूछूं, education का और defense का role beyond NDA training, there seems to be no intersection from where I'm sitting at least.
That's what I thought. And yet it's everything. Okay. Simple example. In the West, you have enough of a disposable income that every 3-4 years, your kid can afford a PlayStation or Nintendo or whatever it is that people are playing today, Xbox, pata nahi kya. That teaches them a completely different way of processing information, and it teaches them a completely different way of shooting skills and this and that.
Yeah.
Okay. In India, for the longest time, you couldn't.
Right now, also, the majority of countries' gamers are playing them on handheld mobile devices. The consoles are still not big in the country.
They're still not big. Yet, fighter pilot responses and things like that are based on those gaming consoles. So you've already received a huge amount of tactile information and information processing based on logos, graphics and things which you simply cannot replicate on a handheld mobile in the West. Now, most of your intake in the military is usually the blue collar class, as it's called. In the West, they're able to afford all of these, even the blue collar classes. In India, they're able to do this. That's already a huge leg up. All the stuff is designed for them, not for us. So our folks have to do another layer of, neuro-linguistic training and things like that to transition from this to that.
From the phone to the weapon.
So for example, some of the more complex...
You're actually saying these... Agar main Call of Duty khel raha hu on a PS5, I'm basically more primed to be a better soldier. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
There's a direct correlation between shooting video games and being a better soldier.
In this day and age where it's all about processing information and your ability to process information on the screen and act on it, yeah.
That's insane.
Surprising, no? Yeah, and yet it is. You are going into an environment where the focus isn't on your fighting skill, it's on the intelligence gathering and things like that. So other things, education is not just what you learn in school. It's also driving a car. Here, everybody prefers a manual car. In the West, everybody prefers an automatic car.
Right.
The manual will be the oddity. Okay. These days, I don't even know if you get manuals anymore outside of Italy. I think most people just go in for automatics. Anyway.
It's a rare thing to get a manual.
In Italy, you'll get
India
lots of manuals.
even in the most basic economic cars, they're doing away with the manual.
But it's overwhelmingly manual even now.
Yeah, because
right?
the older cars are still manual.
Because there's this thing that manual saves fuel, which is not true anymore, but it is. So what ends up happening is just that simple thing of removing the clutch the foot on the clutch and the hand on the gear shift frees up so much space of mind that you're able to focus on the road much better.
Sure.
Okay, we don't give it much, but apparently it reduces accident rates by 80%.
I had no idea. Yesterday I was driving from here to Khan Market and I was wondering, the entire time my hand has been on the right bottom of the steering wheel. It's a straight road.
It's straight road.
But मैं सिर्फ ऐसे चला रहा था with one hand.
You drive a Mercedes, which is even better because it's got that gear shift right there.
Right.
The gear stick is on the steering wheel, and it's as simple as drive, reverse,
Right.
park.
I don't even have to use my left hand.
You don't have to use your left hand at all.
The left hand is for now. It's like
It's for the indicator at best.
no.
but-
The left hand now I use for like changing music because it's now
Exactly. Right.
main for entertainment.
Now, imagine how much mind space that frees up. Now, the West has a system where they focus completely on intelligence gathering. Everything's already done for you. The information is being processed as a part of system of systems. So imagine the mind space. Now, you're already better trained at a PlayStation console than the Indian guy who's basically trained on this.
On the
number
phone,
one.
yeah.
Now, in addition to this, you are now fighting in a PlayStation environment, which is telling you, which is not telling you, it is showing you on a map. These fighters are 20 minutes away, so you have exactly 15 minutes to bomb that target and turn back. You plan accordingly. It is also showing you the circles of surface-to-air missiles, which you have to avoid. Okay? All of this information isn't available because generally a console game is much more complex than a handheld.
They've tried to mimic that with the phone versions of these games, but they've never come as close.
But here we don't even believe in a system of systems thing. So all that information is not displayed. You need to have a mental image of a lot of this. You need to build a mental image of the battle space.
Right.
So a lot of your mind is absorbed in that instead of the single focus that a Western pilot has, which is bombing that. You're still calculating ye kitna time lagayega idhar aane mein.
Yeah, lots of contextual information.
Right, and sometimes you might have an AVAX that shows you that these planes are coming, but then you won't have proper intel on the ground. Because the way it's explained to me in the West is that 90% of the battle is won before the battle even starts, because you know the intel of exactly where things are, what their range is, how to jam them. Here, because we don't focus that much on intel, you might not seek either these things are being shot or this is the radar coverage. You missed a surface-to-air missile battery or an anti-aircraft gun battery. What do you do in that case? You'll get shot down. So it's these things add up. There's several layers to them. And then when you're teaching an Indian all of this, they come from very different linguistic and educational backgrounds. How are you going to synthesize that? One is Telugu medium, one is Kannada medium, one is Hindi medium, one is Odia medium, one is Bengali medium. How are you going to synthesize that? They all have different understandings. They have different understandings of English. There is no standardized teaching of English in this country. So education plays a huge role even in defense. The more technological defense becomes, the more important that role becomes. Even through your service. I find that a lot of people who are posted abroad gain a lot of knowledge, but it remains siloized and it doesn't permeate. So even through career education or knowledge osmosis through the silos even within a single service, forget different services. Army, Navy, Air Force, chhod do, even within the Air Force, within the Army, within the Navy, it does not percolate to each other or osmose to each other. So education plays a huge role. People don't realize that, and this is why we take education as some kind of a joke. We think it's just a means to get a certificate. We don't realize how crucial education is to the defense of the country. You're literally, agar tum education ke saath khilwad kar rahe ho, you're literally playing with the defense of the country.
And from looking at it from the outside, this would never seem obvious.
See, there's a huge stigma about talking about these things in India, no? Mere bete ne degree le liya. 98% of Indian engineers are unemployable. You know that, no? Several studies have found that.
I recently saw that IIT Delhi ke kisi insaan
Some say 95, some say 98, some say 97, I don't know. But
yeah.
well over 90% of them, of engineers in this country, are unemployable. But somebody's got an engineering degree. How are you going to tell them that they don't know how to solve an engineering problem? And, you know, this is the other thing. Technology in the West, because of Western education, like we discussed at the very beginning, enables you to question and go beyond what you've been taught.
Right.
As opposed to an Indian education right up to a PhD, which is you just reproduce what I've told you to write. A Western education prepares that pilot to act like a complete free agent and become a berserker in the air. An Indian education prevents you. You are trained right from your childhood right up to the 12 years of your education plus 3 years of BCom plus 2 years of masters. So 12 plus 5, 17 years. You have been conditioned to just reproduce what you've been taught and not innovate.
That's being a good subordinate.
So imagine an Indian fighter pilot today has to be deprogrammed, has to be reprogrammed in terms of learn by rote and not learn by rote, in terms of phone games versus console games, in terms of data processing, which is completely different. So for example, my mom can process icons in this phone very well, but on a computer, because she skipped the desktop generation in that sense.
Of course, yeah.
Because, you know, government officers had their own typists to type out things, so she never got into computers. There'll only be 10 icons on the home screen. She'll keep searching for like 2-3 minutes just to find that icon.
Right.
And she won't know how to, and this she'll be perfectly fine.
Yeah.
On that she won't. So, you know, even moving from platform to platform is a chore.
And I'm sure
the mind has to be trained up, and we don't take these things very seriously in this country.
Which then begs the question, एक aircraft और कुछ और जो apparatus use करने होंगे in the Indian Army or the Navy or the Air Force, I'm sure there's a high guarantee that the cross-platforming is also fucked. Because it could be very possible that you're using an aircraft from one company, but then the report filing software is completely from another one. So you have to master several platforms.
What we do is we screw up things in that we put different things. So if you buy a car from Mercedes, everything is Mercedes, right?
Yeah.
I mean, आजकल carburetor नहीं होता है, but imagine there was a fuel injection. You can't put a BMW 7 Series ka fuel injection into a Mercedes C-Class ka fuel injection. It's not going to work. We try all these stunts. It doesn't work. We still haven't learnt our lesson. We still don't teach systems integration in this thing.
So we have several different providers for several different defense equipment, and we try to use all of them together.
Yeah, and they don't work.
Yeah. So why not have a unified? Is it because why not have a unified provider for all defense equipment? Is it because it's not competitively priced?
That's foreign policy dependent. You don't trust America, you don't trust Russia, you don't trust anyone. And your scientific bureaucracy never seems to be able to deliver, except when it comes under the Prime Minister directly, which is your ballistic missiles, your space program, and your nuclear submarine program. But that requires, I mean, how many things is the Prime Minister going to control, boss? So anything to do with nuclear deterrence comes under the Prime Minister. And because you can't have missiles without a space program, that comes under the Prime Minister too, which is why they'll always deliver. Because you don't dare lie to the Prime Minister. Or at least there seems to be a much higher level of accountability in the Prime Minister's office. What do you do?
What about social policy? You said social policy also influenced how we think about defense.
So like I said, your approach to education. Tell me, how will the new education policy, NEP, solve any of this?
I'm not sure.
It isn't. Because you said you've moved to a problem-solving approach.
I'm supposed to
from a learn-by-rote approach.
Chairman of UGC soon. I'm going to find out.
So ask him, when you do, him or her, how he expects. It's fine you've written it down. Ki we're moving from rote towards a problem-solving approach. But a problem-solving approach requires the teacher training. The teacher needs to be trained to teach you problem-solving, no? Teacher ही rote का बंदा है, वो कैसे तुमको problem-solving का syllabus सिखाएगा?
The negation of rote is just a void.
Yeah, and mind you, I went to very good schools and say 40 to 50% of my teachers were bad. imagine the general public ka schools. I have had a very privileged life. What about normal schools? I've literally seen teachers in schools I've gone to teaching outright wrong mathematics to kids.
Like that defies the rules of math?
It was just a wrong way of solving the problem. It was wrong.
Okay.
Teaching them wrong English.
That's very common.
No, but wrong maths. I mean, English is, will be, you can say it's, did you understand it? But maths you can't say, did you understand? I know these days it's fashionable to say that 2 plus 2 does not equal 4 because apparently maths is racist. You know that.
So I've heard.
Yeah, 2 plus 2 could be 3 or it could be 5 as well. If you insist it's 4, then it's racist maths. But let's be clear, that's not what maths is. Maths is very objective.
It's a hard science.
It's a hard science.
It's the hardest of all sciences, probably.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
And there seems to be no solution in sight. Is the new government not doing something to counter this?
See, you have to understand that there is a problem to counter it, no? If somebody says, let's make this a problem-solving approach, who in that meeting would have had the guts to stand up to the Prime Minister and say, "Par sir, hamare teacher ki औकात देखी आप लोगों ने?" I think because we're a good news society and we're averse to hearing, I bet you go on YouTube, you'll find podcasts that tell you India is best and India is the greatest get 10 times more view than things that tell you India is shit.
Patriotism always sells. It's been selling the last 3 years.
True, but see, delusion isn't patriotism. Delusion, according to me, is anti-national.
यार हम भी देखते हैं अपने शॉर्ट्स के अंदर ना why India will shine in 2024 उसमें बहुत सारे व्यूज आ रखे होते हैं because there seems to be people want this confirmation.
We're a good news society.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is when you start raising problems, it gets a very negative response, especially in political circles. What do? Because then you become a naysayer, you become negative, you're a toxic person to engage with.
You're a bad storyteller.
Yeah. You're a shakuni, etc., etc. Or you're a mantra. What do?
It's better to shut up
And see, this is how sociology, this is how society and social policy influence defense.
Wow.
So everything's interconnected. So the left is right when they say everything is intersectional. It's just that they weaponize it and use a different kind of bullshit on you, which unless we think about things carefully, we can't come back to them in any logical, systematic fashion. And the problem is the right in India is very different from the French right, which is very different from the American right, which is very different from the Japanese right. Like Manu Joseph says, the right is hyper-local and the left is completely global.
And on that right Japanese note, it is now time to eat some Japanese food.
Yes.
Bro, it's been a delight to have you on once again. Thank you for your illuminating insights. Obviously, people can follow you on Abhijeet Iyer-Mitra on Twitter, where you were once banned, but you've now ever since been reinstated. And follow your your media gossip column, which is, I think, quite the rage now. But yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. And it's insane every time I tweet out something. All my other tweets don't get the kind of engagement that Delhi media gossip does. And I do it more for my own wicked pleasure of outing somebody, because the person who's being talked about knows exactly who's being talked about. But everybody else doesn't, and I don't really appreciate all those calls saying who is it.
The outgroup is the reason gossip works is because the outgroup is desperate to know what is on the inside of the in-group.
But see, I don't enjoy that part. I find that part very irritating, having to tell people.
Yeah.
Because this one is more about, you're such a hypocritical shithead, look.
But the problem with gossip is, if you're doing it on a public platform, there's always going to be an in-group and out-group. Jin logo ko pata, jin logo ko nahi pata. If you were to really do it the way in which you would ensure not have all this attention, he would send a DM to all the required people, right? जिन लोगों को जो same industry के हैं.
Yeah.
But I think the problem is that eventually what's going to happen is someone's going to do it on you.
Which is fine. I'm an open book, right? Have I ever hidden anything about my life?
No.
Yeah.
I think the reason it also works is because there is such a desperate void of gossip. And there's no one who's owned up to this. Like, सब लोग gossip करते हैं, but they use other words. Or they just, like, gossip is such a tasty word to get behind. It was a big part of print journalism and, Zoom TV journalism back in the day. But then somehow the word went out of fashion. So you're bringing back gossip.
I think it went out of fashion every time there was Gossip Girl.
Yeah.
है ना? और उसके बाद it's just...
There was also never political gossip on a public platform. And Gustaki Maaf was very satire-based.
Yeah.
Newspapers were भी satire-based थे. And Zoom TV and Viral Bihani drove Bollywood gossip to death by doing it in a very nasally accent.
I don't know who those are.
Basically, so for example, say, Salman Khan पाए गए अकेले, Katrina Kaif के साथ नहीं दिखे, right? So that kind of way, gossip overall got so villainized that it got thrown out of public discourse completely. But what you do is political gossip. And political gossip is often uttered, in my opinion, in bedrooms and drawing rooms to each other.
Yes.
Or on texts. It's never done in a way where अगर उनको कुछ बोलना है ना आपके बारे में, they just write a tweet. They won't use the word gossip.
But I always put it out with the permission of the person who gave it to me.
Really?
I never put out things where the person says don't share it. Which is why I have to take extra precautions to double check it, because it could be playing somebody's game, you see.
That's true. Wow.
So which is why I double check everything.
Abhijeet, the entertainment journalist. That's one of the many things. All right, bro. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
This was Dostcast with Abhijeet, Iyer-Mitra. See you all on the next episode. Don't forget to subscribe. Take care. Bye-bye. Sayonara.